nothing worthwhile, the recognized symbol of excellence in crappy podcasting.
And then there were two. Back off a hiatus of sort, we are America's #1 bi-coastal podcast featuring two annoying Jews, Deshaun Jackson and Nick Cannon's worst nightmare. We report, you decide. We are nothing worthwhile. On the West Coast in the damn hot city of Phoenix, Arizona, where the high this week was a sweltering 118 degrees. That is correct, everyone. Wow. 118 degrees. Yes, your host and moderator, Evan Moody. On the East Coast, it is Mr. Stallone Awards himself in the great city of Coral Springs, Florida, our in-house critic, Andrew Gruthius. Groo, back after a little bit of a break. How the hell are you, my friend?
I'm doing absolutely mediocre. I'm fine.
You probably had a better week than me, so I'm glad to.
Yeah, we're in the dog days of summer here, as it were. I have never experienced a Florida summer before, as you know. So it's hot, but we got pools and we have air conditioning and we have unemployment checks. God
bless the USA.
Yeah, God bless America. But no, it's we're getting ready to go back to school. And with all the new ideas and innovations that are coming with that, so it's a lot is happening, and nothing is happening at the same time with life. It's just we're just like you. We're just kind of stuck in one place. Meanwhile, there's a million things going on, and I don't know. I get a feeling of like a little bit of helplessness. Do you get that with so many things happening? And us just kind of in the lurch. You know what I mean?
Well, ironically enough, as we've spoke off air, and I'm not going to divulge who, but a member of my immediate family tested positive for COVID, and we had probably a 3-day. I'm not going to say. Listen, I'm not going to be dramatic and say it was chaotic, but it was a couple of days where it was definitely a lot of anxiety.
Sure.
That particular person is feeling much better, and everybody else has tested negative. But here in the state of Arizona, it's really weird, probably somewhat similar to Florida. They're putting in metrics for school openings, but yet August 17th has been mandated as the date, though, for students who want to return and have no other options for in-person learning. So even though schools may be fully remote, they cannot be empty. They have to be housed and manned starting August 17th. And even, I'm not going to get in specifically your district, my district, but there's still some confusion there. But like you, we're trying to soldier on and do the best I can.
I have a question because, I'm interested because our district is, our state is going through the same kind of thing. Like when you say, for those who prefer, they can come to school, and those whose parents do not want them to be in school, they can learn from home. How do you teach that? How does a teacher teach both in class and online at the same time? Is it just a matter of broadcasting the live class like via Zoom, things like that?
I think right now they're equipping all the rooms with webcams. The schools had a big push, the district, with Microsoft Teams, webcams, not Zoom, but nice. Microsoft Teams.
I mean, what?
Yeah, well, and all the teaching will be off the virtual platform, irregardless of the kids in class or not. So the plan would be the plan would be kids are going to be coming into school again. The theory would be the kids would be coming in a hybrid cohort, specific days and specific times with certain groupings of kids. Those kids are in one room. They're not moving. And it doesn't matter exactly what the teacher is teaching because they will have a laptop in front of them. So perhaps the actual physical teacher in front of them may be teaching, and that matches up with their schedule for period 2. But the other periods, they may have headphones on and are accessing other teachers or online coursework throughout the day.
Well, I think that's similar to what we're going to be doing. But you know, because we all have thoughts about this. And can I ask you a question as an administrator? And if you can answer it, great. If you can't, don't. But
sure.
Do you think that now, in the situation we're in, is the time to be innovative like that? And the reason I ask is because I look at what the country's doing, which is the same thing as what we're doing down here, and everybody is pushing out these incredibly comprehensive online learning platforms as if this is going to be what it is forever. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe the better way to do it would be to sort of have the goal of being back in school for the second marking period, which would be in mid-October at some point, and to sort of ease back into in-person learning instead of sort of getting the kids and the teachers so enveloped, I don't even know if that's the right word for this, but so enveloped in the online process that they're going to have to go back and sort of reboot. My feeling is maybe sort of start the year the way we ended it and ease back into classrooms. Because I really do feel that if we do the first quarter remote, the numbers should have time to skew in the right direction, and we might be able to get back in the freaking building. But my feeling as a teacher, one more thought. My feeling as a teacher is that the kids, between being in school, then at home, and then wanting to go back to school and being inside and all this, going all to these different places, by the time, if we give them another big change in October or whenever we get back to school, I feel like they're going to just be sort of drowning in crud. Like, you know, that's just the way I see it. But obviously, you know, I'm just a teacher. I don't see things from your perspective, so that's why I'm asking you.
First of all, let's not look. This is you and I chatting. Let's not worry about our titles or anything like that. My fear is that we'll have 3 downloads after that opening salvo. We'll have two downloads. Look, this is not our strong point. I want to get to, but what I will say is this. What do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention or innovation. So, you know, that these things are going to happen irregardless anyway, and they probably nudged districts a little too quickly into these models. And to answer your question, no, I mean, if this thing ever ends, it's going to go back to the same way. Kids are going to be coming back to school, and probably these online pieces will be eased up. But you know, districts have been forced into it, and they're going to tackle it head first. And, you know, we're doing the best we can, as I'm sure your school and your district is. And,
oh, yeah. I mean, the online stuff that they put together is phenomenal. But but when I see it, it's like almost too good. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
No, I'm completely
really?
Lost. I just want to get to meet
all right,
all the other
okay.
things.
All right,
but
fair
no,
enough.
I mean, listen. Look, here's the thing: schools have been declared an essential business. So the idea is that they want to keep, and whether it's the president, the governor, you know, they want to keep schools open. They want parents who have a job to be able to, if they need to, drop their kids off and also have, let's be honest, childcare as well and coverage. So there's a lot of things, a lot of forces going on. You know, the numbers here in Arizona have they have a mask mandate. From what I've read, things are starting to a little bit fall back into hopefully normal rates, but they're putting out some kind of metric, and no one knows what that metric is, but we know the 17th school buildings must be open for those who are interested in physical learning. Otherwise, schools will go ahead with whatever plans, whether that's distance, hybrid, and that's it.
Okay.
Come on, let's get to some fun stuff, damn it.
All right. So what do we got?
All right, great. Listen, what do I got? Let's see. We got a lot to cover before we get today's topic at hand. We sort of have about 3 broadcasts to cover. First up was the Ultimate Legacy of the Ultimate Warrior. After the podcast, I took some time, as I let you know, and I watched the somewhat Pollyannish documentary on the WWE Network, The Ultimate Warrior, The Ultimate Collection.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I looked back at the Warrior, and it brought some of that WWF nostalgia fan in me. We talked about it over the phone. Groo, final thoughts. I thought it was one of our better ones. The Ultimate Legacy of the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And in listening back to it, the ones that are so great are the ones that have a wealth of history, of up and down history. Like not just like I know we did a Springsteen one, which is always fun to do, but there's not much mythology with that. There's not much mystery. He's kind of like an open book, and there's and he's never really gotten into trouble or had a downtime, whatever. Ultimate Warrior has had nothing but a tumultuous ride, that unfortunately ended early. So, and I mean, I think we did 3 hours on the Ultimate Warrior. Am I wrong?
Pretty close.
Yeah. So
Pretty
it
close.
was. In listening back to it, it flew by, and I really I enjoyed it because and we have 2 kind of differing opinions on certain things about it, and that creates the best kinds of broadcasts, I think. So it was good.
What did surprise me though is I felt like we're 2 kind of different wrestling fans, but I found myself, I was surprised that you agreed with me on a lot. I was surprised at some of your takes. I think you look back on his pure. Well, I think you look back on his pure wrestling career a little more fondly than perhaps I do. But the talk about the Hall of Fame and his legacy, we were pretty much spot on. The same feelings.
So you didn't like, for example, when we went to SummerSlam and it was Hogan and Warrior versus Slaughter and his 2 guys. You weren't excited to see that kind of tag team match? You weren't excited like Hogan and Warrior, this is going to be awesome, because I remember
but that was umpteen years ago. But what we did talk about was, I feel like you sometimes watch through the lens of that 13 or 15-year-old back in the day. Of course, I was super excited, but I'm 49 years old. When I watch his matches now, they haven't. They're way worse than Hogan. They have an 8. I mean, he is not good in the ring. He's, dare I say, even terrible in the ring.
Yeah.
But of course I was super excited, and I was a Warrior fan, and I admitted on the podcast I was actually very excited for his WCW comeback, which we talked about was a big fail, but I was ready to buy into it when he returned to WCW.
Yeah, well, look, as you know, I watch everything through the 13 to 15-year-old lens, so but yeah, all right. So I'm a little more, I guess, admiring of his skills in being able to get the crowd going, and I said that, and then the crowd was always his to lose, that was his biggest skill. But it was a good episode. I really enjoyed listening to it, as opposed to our terrible ones.
Well, there are no terrible ones. From there, Groo, we had already joined, but was released. We joined friend of the show, Ryan Rebalkin, on his podcast, The Worst of the Best, to cover part 3 of Bon Jovi. Always a lot of fun working with Ryan. Our 3-part podcast episode run is over. How do you think we did, Groo? And final thoughts on Bon Jovi and our visits to the Worst of the Best podcast?
Well, it speaks to the legacy of Bon Jovi that we could do 3 podcasts about one aspect of Bon Jovi. which is, I think, the greatest hits CDs there. And Ryan does such a terrific job, not just on that one, but on all his other podcasts. The Rocky podcasts, and he was a guest. He was a guest on another podcast. I forgot. I don't remember the name. It's not part of that whole network. But and I see a lot of the responses on Twitter because they send it to his Twitter account. So, and we got a lot of positive responses to the three of us together doing that. And I discovered a lot of things about Bon Jovi that I really didn't know, and that to me is the joy. All
right, so here let's not over take too much time. But what was one thing you discovered about Bon Jovi that surprised you?
It's not so much that I discovered something about Bon Jovi. It's just I discovered music that I really had. I don't listen to a lot of newer stuff, and Bon Jovi keeps putting out stuff, and there was a lot of stuff I was unfamiliar with. So in doing the research for that podcast, I listened to all of those songs, and I was like, well, there's good stuff here that could definitely go alongside their classics, and to be doing that, 30 something years into your career. Still putting out relevant stuff and good stuff. I was really pleasantly surprised. I had written off, basically since Sambora left, I had sort of written Bon Jovi's new stuff off because I really felt he added, something necessary. Well, they carried on, and they're still doing great work. So that's pretty much what I discovered, that they're still great.
You'll have to share with me some of that stuff on Twitter. I'm curious to see some of the comments.
First, you have to get on Twitter.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. Groo, finally, it was our Nothing Worthwhile 1,500 download special, the Stallone Awards, a celebration of all things Sylvester Stallone. We gave out awards ranging from the Do We Get to Win This Time award for greatest Stallone villain to the Over the Top award for greatest Stallone movie. It was hosted by moi and Groo and show friend and fellow Stallone enthusiast Ryan Rebalkin debating their award picks. Lots of fun debate with some moments of real fan passion. Groo, final thoughts on the Stallone Awards?
Actually, I haven't listened to it, but doing it was wait a minute. But doing it was an absolute blast. It was. I love talking about that stuff, and I love hearing revelatory stuff. Stuff that, like, I loved hearing your opinions about my opinions and Ryan's opinions, and I loved hearing how not just the what but the why. And it was a real nice retrospective of the guy's career if you look at it. And it was so much fun to do. And with those surprise guest performances, I mean, I still have goosebumps. We met a lot. A lot of famous people that night. It was great.
You know what? I think just like even like post 9/11, for us to host the first public event in the COVID era.
Yeah.
We held it at Comerica Theater. That was so brave.
It was, and
almost true. Almost, we were true patriots that day.
Yes, and I have an announcement to make. You and I are actually, because of that, we're getting the co-presidential medals of freedom next week. So we will be off the air next week because we will be at the White House.
I'm accepting. I don't care. I'll go there. I'm accepting.
I'll stand right next to Rush Limbaugh, man. I don't care.
That's right. All right, Groo, you got the jingles ready to rock and roll?
I do. I hope.
All right, well then let's get to it, Groo. It's Nothing Worthwhile. Breaking news!
All right, what we got?
Groo, just about maybe 2 hours before we came on air, breaking news. Just wanted to get your thoughts. New York media legend and national television personality Regis Philbin, dead at the age of 88. Just wanted to get your thoughts on Regis Philbin, dead at the age of 88.
88 years old. It just goes to show you, kids, smoking kills.
Come on, be serious.
I just love that joke. That was a Saturday Night Live joke. But why are you looking at me like that?
Can you please? I'm trying to craft a show here. Can you? I wanted to get your thoughts on Regis passing at the age of 88.
Regis is an absolute legend, and it's surprising. I think the death was kind of sudden, although at that age, you never really know, unfortunately. But he was a guy. He did. I mean, is there anything that guy didn't do? I've seen that guy act in movies that I didn't even know he was in. Sometimes playing himself and sometimes actually playing a character. But he was a game show host. He was a talk show host. I think he wrote a couple books. I mean, excuse me. Talk about if Howard Stern is the king of all media, Regis is like the prince because he covered it all. And it's unfortunate because he seemed like such a very vibrant, even in his older age, he seemed like such a very vibrant and active guy. And it's a loss. But, it's hard to say it's a tragedy because he did a life well lived to 88 and still, and to accomplish the things he's accomplished. Definitely, we have to mark the moment for him, without a doubt. Legend.
Yeah, I feel like when I heard the news, the first thing that came to my mind, and I'm really being serious, was he's like of a woebegone era in television or entertainment. He was... I think on the outside, when I first saw Regis, I thought, yeah, he's kind of milquetoast, kind of just a standard television host. But it was a different era where I think they solely wanted to come on and entertain you. And I actually, he did some pretty cool stuff. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and like you said, he did some other media stuff, and he can mix it up with the WWE in a special guest appearance or with Howard Stern. So I mean, he had maybe a little edge to him. But I think you don't really see television hosts or media hosts like that. He really came on with no agenda except to entertain the audience and to run the show, cohesively and efficiently. And I just felt like, you don't really see types like Regis Philbin anymore.
Yeah, and he always hit a home run. I remember 2 appearances he made on the Larry Sanders Show, where he literally stole the episodes. Because he was just so good playing himself. And rest in peace, Regis. Without a doubt.
All right, good words, Groo. All right, let's get to it. From our crappy and shoddy, nothing worthwhile Facebook page, it's time for Viewer Mail!
Letters, we got your letters. We got your letters every day. Mailman ding dong, give me a letter today.
Well, listen, I actually want to encourage everybody to check out our Nothing Worthwhile Facebook page.
Yes.
Hey, do you know that right now, actually, we are running about 19-20% downloads from India? So I just want to say hello, India.
Namaste.
And please email me at moodyad1@aol.com. I'm fascinated. I think that's so awesome. And if there is somebody listening from India, please email the Facebook page.
Yeah, say hello.
I'd love to say hello, and I'd love to. I love Sumit from 90 Day Fiancé. All right, thank you. All right,
20%.
Welcome. 19% of our downloads are from India. It's incredible. I mean, I think that's really wonderful.
So
really,
what
really
you're saying
cool.
is we have really no friends in the United States.
Well, listen. I mean, that was part of the reason for this show, right? You and I just would completely fixate on these same 4 topics and just bring them up in different variations.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, listen. Of course, we have some great comments on the Facebook page. SG from South Florida. Let's go over it. Groo, enjoyed it very much. However, I have a few comments which I'd like to share. First comment was amazing the number of times the phrase "over the top" was used, both directly and indirectly. Groo, I have to admit on my notes I did not give that much thought. Groo, do you say "over the top" a lot?
We all did, and I said it on the show. I remember marking how many times are we going to say "over the top" because so much of what Sylvester Stallone does is just that, but beautifully so. But yeah, we did keep repeating that phrase in relation to the movie and his career in general. So yes, I do remember that, and it was fine. I mean, that's just the way it went.
Moody's disdain for the guest host, that's Ryan.
What?
Use of the term... Hang on, let me read you the comments. Let me, please. Moody's disdain for the guest host, which would be Ryan, use of the term film was palpable. So again, I did not get that. I enjoyed having Ryan on and his thoughts on the Stallone experience. I think what made Ryan a great guest on our podcast was he looks at films a bit more critically, which is great. While I think, this is just how I feel, Groo and I tend to hit it from a little bit more from the hip and more from the gut experience, although I think Andy's a little bit more refined in the movie, all joking aside. But I think Ryan made great points, and ultimately I found myself agreeing and enjoying his comments as well as I enjoyed Andy's comments. But I didn't remember having any disdain for anyone's use of the word film or any disdain for anyone.
Any disdain,
really.
You just have disdain for me, no matter what I say, and that's perfectly
no,
fine.
Absolutely.
But who is this SG,
no,
man? We gotta stop reading his stuff. He hates us.
Anyway, I put in the notes, so let's go through it. They really enjoyed Eye of the Tiger. That was a showstopper, so that I thought that final product was a brilliant disaster.
We worked so hard and long on that one. I mean, I think we put in a full 10 minutes on it.
Okay, well, here's one that I do like. The In Memoriam was fun but confusing. Ode to dead characters or dead people. Now, I'm going to just say that Andy and I talked about this. He wanted to do an In Memoriam. I wasn't even sold on it, but then I was like, all right, because an award show, they typically would have an In Memoriam segment. But of course, Andy has to do it and does an In Memoriam to Stallone characters when I think it should have been done to actors. And then you could have played the clip of the actor doing the character. But, obviously he said it was a bit confusing. It's ultimately Groo. I think I need to step in and take further creative control. Groo is he's Jackie Martling or Vince Russo. He needs a Howard or a Vince McMahon to rein him in. I loved all of it, but I do think the In Memoriam was a bit confusing.
Well, I can see that, and we did talk about that beforehand, and I didn't want it to be morbid. I wanted it to be kind of tongue in cheek. So, and that's why I did it that way. I thought it'd be more fun to pay tribute to the characters in the Stallone movies that are no longer with us. Actors, that would have been an hour long. But that's not why I chose to do it the other way. I chose to do it because I really thought it would be kind of amusing, and not everything is a home run.
Right, but isn't the fun of if there is fun of In Memoriam is there's always right, but isn't the next day there's always criticism like they didn't put this person on or that person, like you got to cut it at some point. You can't make a 30-minute segment on In Memoriam. So it's always funny. There's always one or two that like the next day media or television shows will be like, oh, I wonder why they didn't have this person on the In Memoriam.
Yeah,
they had a great
I guess
career.
We missed our chance to get our water cooler moment.
That's okay.
Our next award show, I'll do it the proper way. I promise.
No worries. Want to get your thoughts on this. The absolute worst take of the entire broadcast was Moody's choice of Rocky IV. It is so bad I am almost offended at his decision. Have you watched any other movie other than the Rocky series? It is appalling that a movie as exciting as Rocky IV could possibly be selected or even considered for that category. Just awful. So I'm assuming that the writer, Mr. SG, is critical of my criticism of Rocky IV. Not only do I stand by it, I'm doubling down on it. Rocky IV is a terrible movie. Unlike Andy Groo, it's a terrible Rocky movie. It's a terrible movie. It's a terrible overall movie. And based off of Andy's equation of expectation versus delivery, it even makes it worse. So I'm sticking by it. I don't know if you have any thoughts of the criticism of Rocky IV, of my selection of Rocky IV.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was coming because I know how you feel about it. I don't agree that I'm not as angry as SG from South Florida, but I don't agree with you because I do actually think it is a very well-made movie. It's just not a good Rocky movie. That's
Andy, don't do this, please. Don't do this. How is then it's not a well-made movie if it doesn't hit the critical mark? I mean, sure. I mean, you could say the editing and the music, fine, but
but that's the thing. That's
like me saying that Porky's was a well-made movie. I mean, no, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's a bad analogy or
I think it's a bad analogy because it's well directed. Stallone directed it. It's well directed. It's beautifully filmed. The fight is incredibly exciting. Yes, the montages are a bit much, but that was very 80s. That was the Top Gun era. There's not that much difference between Rocky IV and Top Gun. The only difference is we expected more from Rocky IV than that we because up till then Rockies 1, 2, and 3 were three of like the greatest movies we've seen. So obviously expectations are very high. But like I said, as a Rocky movie, it doesn't quite fit in there. But as a movie, a standalone by itself, I actually watched it 2 nights ago. And
what are you going to tell me? It grew on you. You found new sources of inspiration. Don't tell me that.
I didn't, and I'm not going to. I'm just going to say the only thing is I appreciated it for what it was, and I enjoyed every minute of watching the movie. But also I have the Creed 2 stuff in my head, and I'm looking at parallels, and it's just fun as hell, to me. But I understand your pick, and I'm not angry with you for it. This guy this guy wants your head on a platter.
No, he doesn't want my head on a platter, but I think being
he does. He told me. Wait, what? I don't know him.
Come on. I think first of all, don't do that. Wait, what? You do that opener all the time. Wait, what? I think being a good conversationalist or an interesting podcast is you take a position and you stick with it. And I feel like you find a way to kind of go middle of the road. It's I'm saying to you, Rocky IV is not a good movie. But you're like, it's not, but it's well lit. It's well shot.
I didn't say it wasn't a good movie. I said it's not a good.
You said it was a.
And I stand you just talked about standing by your opinions. Well, I'm standing by that.
Well, we could agree. All right, we could agree to disagree. Fine. Let's see. All right, let's see. Stallone is Rocky. So his best acting performances in Rocky and Creed. I actually think Creed is his best acting job, except Freddie, Heflin, and Copland. In Rambo, he's still Stallone. He transformed himself in Copland. He is such a unique person and character, it almost makes it impossible for him to escape it. Moody, you may have selected Copland as his best acting performance, but your choice of Rocky IV overshadows that decision, and it's shameful. You know what I want to say to Steven? Get on a plane and fly down to across to Arizona and say that to my face.
He will.
Yeah, shameful. You know what's shameful? What Deshaun Jackson has to say about Jews. That's shameful. Me saying Rocky IV is overrated is my opinion. No, it's not hey now. It's my opinion, and for that matter.
Wait, I'm getting a...
Hold on, I'm speaking. It's not a wacky choice because the rest of the panel, everybody somewhat concurred with my choice. Shameful, I think that's a little bit strong.
Well, let me ask you question. Can I ask you one question?
Yes, Andrew.
Is Rocky IV a worse movie than Stop or My Mom Will Shoot?
Well, I would say on a typical scale, no. But if I looked at your expectation versus delivery model, which I actually agree with, I would say then yes. But no, on the surface, no, it's not a worse movie than Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
So like I said, we're talking about what we hope for and what we get. That's the model. So, and I agree with you. I actually agree with you. Rocky IV is a huge letdown.
My last point was not that Steven's criticism. It's the fact that he says stuff like shameful, like somehow like that really, like my girlfriend was reading that and she was like, who is this Steve? Is that Groo's brother? Wow, he's so strong with his criticism. I'm like, yeah, you would have thought I like went out there and just lambasted somebody. I'm
He's
just
passionate. He's a passionate guy.
That's great, but I'm gonna give it back. He says that the best co-star was Carl Weathers. He didn't understand any of our choices at all. The iconic Apollo Creed character is so disappointed. Why didn't you just put Estelle Getty in there while you have it? And then obviously to Stephen, I would say that's a matter of opinion. When I said co-star, and I said this on the podcast, I didn't think of guys like Burt Young, Talia Shire, and Carl Weathers because it's like it's a massive novel, all the Rocky movies, and they're there for all of it or for most of it, and they're very important characters. I don't know why, but when I came up with the category, I thought of people who just had one-offs, and I don't have any reason why. That's just, but I certainly think Carl Weathers was an amazing actor, an amazing, important piece of the Rocky universe, without a doubt.
Well, you and Ryan shared that opinion with my selection of Burt Young because he picked Kurt Russell for Tango and Cash. And did you make a pick? You did for some, you didn't for others. Did you make a pick for that?
Yeah, you're going to hate mine, but I said best co-star.
Wesley Snipes?
And again, I said Sandra Bullock.
Oh, okay.
And my only reasoning behind that was amazing chemistry, great sexual tension, and it kicked off an amazing. Ryan didn't think so, but a pretty strong career for Sandra Bullock. Yeah. So that was my only. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I didn't put a lot of thought.
Well, I did, and I think we just looked at the category differently. That's all. With that.
Right. All right, Groo, let's get to some criticism about you.
Nice.
Your choice for Brian Dennehy was, quote, such a pathetic attempt to get his beloved Rambo some recognition, not even close to being the best bad guy. Groo, the floor is yours. Please respond to that criticism.
It's just my choice, and it wasn't. It was remember the category was adversary / villain, right?
Right.
That was it.
Yes.
So on that front, I felt that they just went toe to toe, and it was a real personal thing that lasted throughout the entire movie. Like the villains in the Rocky movies are, as like when you definitely get starting with like Clubber Lang, and then when you get to Drago, they're kind of like James Bondish type villains. So it's not. Even though they try to be real personal, it's not. Apollo wasn't a villain; he was an opponent. He wasn't.
I agree.
Most of Rocky has nothing to do with Apollo at all. The first two Rockies, it's just this is who he's going to fight. In the first Rambo, from the very first moments till the very last shot, it's really Stallone versus Teasel / Dennehy, and I really enjoyed that. I just thought two great actors.
I think that was a great choice, and I thought that your reasoning behind it was actually really coherent, and I couldn't see a problem. Now, listening back to it, because I did listen back to it, because I'm always excited to hear our podcast. I listened to it on the car, But one thing I will say is, I didn't pick up on this initially, but Ryan talked about Teasel reuniting with Rambo at the last blood, and having him maybe see Rambo in a jail, and having maybe some kind of redemptive final piece to that last blood where they come together even though Rambo's in jail. And at the time I wasn't listening, I didn't connect, but I don't think that would have been organic I don't know. After listening to it, I was like, I don't know if I would have liked that kind of thing to happen at the end of Last Blood.
No, definitely not organic. It wouldn't have made sense, but it would have been cool. It would have been cool to see, and then like a year later, you'd be like, all right, not necessary, just a little Easter egg. But No, it wouldn't have made sense. That's the problem. It wouldn't have made sense, in my opinion.
Okay, last comment. I did my best with the Ultimate Warrior podcast. I couldn't do it. Made 3 attempts. So listen, I actually enjoyed listening back to the Ultimate Warrior podcast. Listen, you're either not a fan of ours or not a fan of the Warrior. And again, I'm fine with both. But hey, you know what? Some people like our wrestling stuff. Our wrestling podcasts usually pull our best numbers, actually, to be honest with you.
Well, he's not a huge wrestling fan. He's a huge Hulk Hogan fan. So, like, if we did a 9-hour podcast on Hulk Hogan, he'd listen all the way through and love every minute of it. I don't remember him being really interested in the Ultimate Warrior when we were growing up.
Yeah, I got to find a good angle. A Hulkster, it's very broad, but if I'm going to think about it, and I'll pitch you a topic having to do with the Hulkster in the future. All right, Groo, before we get today's topic at hand, so before we get today's topic at hand, Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hells, let's warm up the crowd with a new segment. Groo, it's time to play a game.
Time to play the game.
Nothing Worthwhile presents Game Time with Moody and Groo.
All right, Groo, let's pitch it to you. You produced this segment. What do you got?
All right. Well, that's our new jingle. Sorry I had to cut it off there, but we're still working out the kinks. But today's game is entitled the inaugural Meatloaf game. We have selected one of our devoted listeners. I'm not going to tell Evan who. The game here, actually, the only contestant really is my partner, Evan. You are on the hot seat here because I asked this particular fan of our show 8 questions about Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell series. Your job is to decide whether he is going to get them right or wrong. So he does have answers recorded. So you're going to hear the question, and then you're going to tell me, before I play the answer, you're going to tell me, do you think he's going to know it or not know it? And you'll also tell me if you know it or not know it. But that's not where the game is. The game is whether you predict his answers. You understand how it works?
Before we get to this, yeah, the only thing I'm going to need from you is after the question, I just need you to give me the finger so that I'll give you my response.
I can do that all the time.
Well, you know what I mean.
Hey-o! Okay, so I am going to start this up right now with question number 1. Question number 1. What frequent Meatloaf collaborator wrote all of the songs for Bat Out of Hell's 1 and 2? What frequent collaborator with Meatloaf wrote all of the songs for Bat Out of Hell's 1 and 2? Do you know the answer to that?
I believe I do.
And what is the answer to that?
That would be Mr. Jim Steinman.
Jim Steinman, that is correct. Now, the real question is, will this person know it? But wait, first you have to know who the person is.
No, you could. I mean, I know the person.
It's SG from.
All right, so it's Steven.
It's my brother. Yeah. Will Steven know it?
Now, that if you're a Meatloaf fan, you should definitely know that question. Even a base Meatloaf fan, everyone knows his collaboration with Jim Steinman. The question is Steven a big Meatloaf fan? I never got the sense he was, but he grew up with you. I'll say he knows it.
You'll say he knows it. Okay, well, we will find out right now. Will he know it? Evan thinks so. Let's find out. 2. That is incorrect. He did not know. He did not know. The answer was, I don't know. So, incorrect for Moody. Moody is 0 for 1, as is Steven. Unfortunately, I guess he just, that's weird. I mean, and I think I did say to him, I'm like, the name is right on the title of the
Hey,
season.
Groo, let me ask you a question. If I get 5 out of 8, do I get $711 from 7-Eleven? Like, are they sponsoring this
Yes,
segment?
and a free Big Gulp Slurpee.
Go ahead. All right, let's get to number
question
2.
Number 2. Question number 2. Name 3 songs from the original Bat Out of Hell. Name 3 songs, Evan, from the original Bat Out of Hell album. Can you name all 7, first of all?
Well, I'm not going to cheat, and no. But not looking at my notes, Bat Out of Hell. I took the words right out of my mouth, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Would that cover 3?
That's correct for you. But will Steven know 3?
I mean, if he doesn't know Jim Steinman, I can't imagine he could know 3 songs. So I'm going to say no.
Now we're talking about one of the top-selling albums of all time.
Andy, I know I got the notes right in front of me. I mean, not the track listing. I got it for you, brother. I'm saying no. Put it down.
All right, well, let's find out. Will Steven know it? Evan says he will not. Will he?
Okay. That's like his first album ever, right?
Yes, it was his first album ever.
Bat Out of Hell.
That's one.
He's
got one.
The song is Bat Out of Hell.
One.
Uh-oh.
All right, so he's got one. He said Bat Out of Hell. He's got one. One.
Just play the answer and get to it.
That song, Do You Love Me? I don't know the name of it. Do You Love Me? Well, that's probably the name of it.
All right, so Do You Love Me? He was like, Do you love me? And do you count that? Because that's
You're the judge.
No, You're
producing this segment.
Hey, hang out.
Oh my God!
You.
This is a dog already.
It's a collaborative effort. Do you?
It's first.
Do you count that?
No, I mean, is there a name of a song called "Do You Love Me"?
No. All right, so we won't count it.
That's wrong.
So it's wrong. Let's see what else he picked.
Oh my God! I got to produce a segment I didn't produce.
I will call that a yes. It's called "Paradise by the Dashboard Light," but I will give you credit for that. I gave him credit.
That's it.
That's it. So the answer is incorrect.
But
it doesn't matter because that was the only one he knew. He didn't even say Bat Out of Hell. Steven, talk about shameful. You want to take your shot right now, Evan? Go ahead.
No, let's get to number 3. Come on, we got a lot of cover.
Right,
I want to have some downloads.
You got that right, so you're 1-1. All right, question number 3.
Okay.
Incorrect. You don't know the songs Heaven Can Wait, For Crying Out Loud. Every Saturday night, I felt the fever flow, all revved up. I can't fast forward this.
I do.
Oh my God, we're going to have 1 download. Mother. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about broadcast quality.
Wrong, so we'll hopefully
Hang on.
Moody got it right. Okay.
All right, here's 3.
Complete the lyric. Question number 3. Complete the lyric. Like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone when the... Okay, like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone when the... Complete the lyric. Will he get it? What is it? Do you know?
Is it when the morning comes?
That is correct. But the question is, will he know that?
I don't think he's going to know anything, Meatloaf. So I'm going to say no.
You don't think he's going to get that one. Okay. We will find out in just a moment. Will he get it? Evan says no. Whoa. That was weird. Out of hell, I'll be gone
Puberty.
when the
morning comes?
That is correct. He got it. He got it. The morning comes. Oh, boy. All right. We'll move on to question number 4. Are you ready? Here it is. That is correct. Question number 4. Which 2 E Street Band members, Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band members, played on all songs on the original Bat Out of Hell? So, which 2 members of Springsteen's E Street Band played on all of the songs on Bat Out of Hell? Do you know the answer?
I believe I do, Andrew. I believe that's Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg.
That is quite correct. Will Steven know it? He's a huge Springsteen fan.
Okay, hold. Am I allowed some feedback? I know Steven's a Bruce fan. But I don't think he knows anything, Meatloaf. Really, he has a more surface level than me. So I'm going to say, although those are 2 key members, you're not getting really his stuff. The saxophone is not strong, so you could. I say he doesn't know it. I'm going to go with no.
He doesn't know it. Let us see. We'll find out. Does he know it? Bad Out of Hell.
Well, I know 4 members of Bruce Springsteen's band, excluding Bruce, or 5. I know 5. You know, well, Roy Bittan is everywhere, so it's got to be Roy Bittan.
All right, he got Roy Bittan. Good.
And let's go with Max Weinberg.
He got it.
Max Weinberg 7.
He got it. Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg. Ooh, I'm impressed. Evan, your score now is 1 for 4.
I'm only got one. Yeah, let's go.
4. Okay,
I got to get these next whole bunch right.
Question number 5.
Max Weinberg 7.
That is correct. Bittan and Weinberg. Very good. Okay. Question number 5. Question number 5. What is the name of the first song on Bad Out of Hell 2? What is the name of the first song on Bad Out of Hell 2? What is it, Evan?
Is it I would do anything for love, but I won't do that?
That is correct.
I would do anything for...
That is correct, but will Steven know that?
I'll go yes. That was a pretty strong...
in the other direction. He's going yes.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Know it. So let's see, Steven. He's having some more faith in you. Let's find out. Bad Out of Hell 2. Tick tock. The very first
The most famous song on the album. That's I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Yes, he got it. Yes.
All right, there we go.
Coming back. Moody is coming back. All right.
I gotta get 5 for my $711.
Yes,
Come on, here we go.
Next question. That is correct. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Good job, both of you. Okay, number 6. Question 6. Complete the lyric / title. Complete the lyric. Objects in the rear view mirror. Objects in the rear view mirror. Blank.
May appear closer than they are?
That is correct. Will he know that?
Well, I mean, that's... On the surface, no, but that's a standard sort of... It's in everybody's car. Steven's a smart guy, so I'll say he knows it.
You'll say he knows it. Okay. Let's see.
He knows it. What the hell? What kind of language am I... My grammar is horrific.
Let's see. Will he know it or
Yeah,
not?
he knows it.
Are closer than they appear?
Ooh, interesting answer. He said, "Are closer than they appear."
No, that's incorrect.
That's not correct. That's not correct.
All right, so I can't. All right, so we're gonna play for just fun because I can't win the $711.
Well, wait a minute.
2 out of 6.
So you said he would know that, and he didn't. All right, so you're 2 out of 6. So you can get 4.
I'm 2 up. I'm 2 up, 4 down. All right, let's move along. Come on.
You can bat 500. So here we go. Question number 7. We're going to have to get a judge's ruling on that. We've ruled. The correct answer is objects in the rear view mirror may appear closer than they are, which doesn't really make sense, but you were close. We're going to have to go for a judge's ruling, but we'll see. We'll come back to that later. All right. Final 2 questions. What legendary sportscaster lent his signature voice to Paradise by the Dashboard Light from Bad Out of Hell 1? So, what legendary sportscaster lent his voice to the song Paradise by the Dashboard Light from Bad Out of Hell 1? Now, do you know?
He's got to know that. Yeah, that's Phil Rizzuto, the iconic Yankee... He was shortstop or second baseman and Hall of Famer. Yeah, he's got to know that. Steven's a baseball fan. He's a music fan. Okay. I'll go with yes.
We will find out right now whether Steven knows it or not. Who is the legendary sportscaster on Bad Out of Hell 1? By the Dashboard Light from Bad Out of Hell 1.
Marty Glickman.
Incorrect. He said Marty Glickman. And that is
oh my God!
That is decidedly incorrect.
Marty Glickman.
Wait, I want to hear the reaction to that. The correct answer, of course, is the Scooter. Scooter Phil Rizzuto. Yes. Marty.
Well, I hate
So did he? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the response. Did he get it or no?
No, he didn't get it.
Okay.
No, he didn't get it. He didn't get it. So, yeah, you're not doing so well either on this. All right.
That's okay.
Finally,
For fun.
Finally, our final question, and here we go.
Thank God. People in India are shooting themselves.
Ronald Reagan. The answer is Phil Rizzuto, so you got that wrong. And finally, final question, finally going into Bat Out of Hell 3 territory. What legendary British guitarist may have played on the song Bad for Good from Bat Out of Hell 3? What legendary British guitarist may have played on the song Bad for Good from Bat Out of Hell 3?
Oh, that's a terrible question overall. May have played on it? What kind of crap is that? That's like your Bon Jovi trivia question on the worst of the best. I know that there were special guest guitarists on Bat Out of Hell 3, and I know that there were mostly like new rock kind of guys. John 5. I have. Let me see here.
Can I say one thing though? In response to what you just said, there is a hint in the question. And I'll say the question again. I'll say
why can't it just be so? Why is it? Can't it be straightforward? Why is there always a? Why, God?
Evan, I'm going to ask you one more time. What legendary British guitarist may have played on the song "Bad for Good" from Bat Out of Hell 3? There's a hint. I mean,
British guitarists. I'm trying to guess myself. Page, Clapton. I mean, that's where, I'm not sure myself. I'll go with, I don't think Clapton, Jimmy Page. Is that correct?
That is not correct. So do you...
it doesn't matter if we could tell the answer.
No, I'm going to tell you. The answer is Brian May from Queen.
Okay, I did read that.
The hint being may have played. The question is.
Oh, Andy, he did play. I've read that.
I know.
So
I wanted to give a hint.
Oh my God! Somebody please write on the Facebook page. How do you ask that kind of question? I don't think Steven's going to know it.
You don't think he's going to know it?
I definitely read that. No, because Bat Out of Hell 3 is not very well known, and I mean, I know Steven's a rock fan, but you got to be pretty precise for that. So let's try to end on a good note. I'm going to say no.
Okay, no. The Evan's answer is no. So let's see what SG says from Bat Out of Hell 3.
I think only two British guitarists come to mind. I just watched Bohemian Rhapsody, so I'm going to go with Brian May.
He got it. Brian May. He got it.
He got it. You had to give him
my God. He got it! Wow, very good. My goodness gracious!
I'm calling brother nepotism on that one.
Brother nepotism.
You gave him the answer.
Who has been more torturous of my brother than me? And you're talking about brotherhood nepotism? He said he just watched Bohemian Rhapsody, so that popped into mind. I guess.
Okay, listen. Fair enough.
So final score. So for this game, you get 2 points.
Thank you. Let's move on. Thank you. I did enjoy that. I think we got to tighten it up a little bit and ask more concise questions, but that was good. That was fun. And thank you, Stephen, for playing, helping us out here. Groo, let's get to that topic for today. It's Marvin Lee Aday, better known as Meatloaf. And specifically, Meatloaf and his run of 3 Bat Out of Hell albums. Groo, I'd like to ask you 1 or 2 questions right off the top. Mr. Loaf is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Should he be?
100%. Yes, absolutely. Not even close on that one. In fact, I'm surprised. I never even thought about that. And you asking the question and me realizing that he's not. Yeah, he's got to be. What do you think?
Okay. I think I didn't give much thought to it. I'm going to say off the top, I am a fan of Meatloaf, and I have gone with Andy to see him live, but Andy's probably a much more versed Meatloaf fan. But if you gave the comparison literally of the Ultimate Warrior, then yes, Meatloaf needs to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because while he's had really to one completely massive classic rock and roll album, two really big albums, and that's a lot more than people have their entire career. And so when I think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I try to think about, was there a period in time when this artist was like the best or on top of their game? And I think Meatloaf for a while was right there, in pop culture and in rock and roll as being a top level artist. And so, I whether he sustained it, that's for another time. But Bat Out of Hell 1 is an absolute classic. And Bat Out of Hell 2, I won't say, I'll save my thoughts, but it still was a very far-reaching album. So I think on that, I believe, he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay, we agree.
Okay. All right, so listen, we're going to go through it. I don't have every nook and cranny of Mr. Loaf, so please don't, if I don't have, Jim Steinman, for better, for worse, B-side, we don't talk about that. It's because for time's sake. But let's get to it, Groo. Marvin Lee Aday was born in Dallas, Texas, the only child of Wilma Artie, a school teacher and a member of the church gospel quartet in Orvis Wesley Aday. His dad was a former police officer who went into business with his wife and opened up the Griffin Grocery Company, selling homemade cough remedy. Meatloaf's father was an admitted alcoholic who would go on drinking binges for days at a time, and may have been an early victim of PTSD as he was a veteran of World War II. 1965, Meatloaf graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School. He did take part in acting productions such as Where's Charlie and The Music Man. And of course, we know that Broadway theatrical sound became such a staple of Meatloaf's music. He attended college at Lubbock Christian College and then transferred over to North Texas State University. His mother did pass away while... Excuse me? About Jewish?
Loaf I said Loaf isn't a Jewish name. I thought he went to a...
Listen, the only thing I know beyond meatloaf is my mom makes a great meatloaf with ketchup, salt and pepper. That's about it.
Oh, my God, I love it. Oh.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. His mom died while he was in college. He received quite a bit of inheritance, moved into an apartment in Dallas, and isolated himself for 3.5 months, which I wrote, it's a drop in a bucket for you and me. Yeah. We could do 3.5 months standing on our head.
Damn right. And after
this, yes. After this period of depression, he went out and took a plane out to L.A. to begin his musical career. He formed his first band called Meatloaf Soul after a nickname coined by his football coach because of his weight. He was offered 3 recording contracts, which he turned down. The Meatloaf Soul had some notable opening act gigs. He's opened for Van Morrison's band, Them, Taj Mahal, and Janis Joplin. The band, made some different changes and then reworked as the Floating Circus. They opened for The Who, The Stooges, the MC5, and the Grateful Dead.
Wow.
Their regional success led them to release a single called Once Upon a Time. Meatloaf then joined the LA production of the musical Hair, which, of course, again, not surprising, giving Loaf's penchant for a very theatrical Broadway type of sound. Are you a fan of that kind of sound, that Broadway-ish?
I'm a fan of it when it works, obviously, and Meatloaf on his records has made it work more times than he hasn't. But we'll get to it. But when he tries for it and fails, it's with a very loud thud.
Okay.
But when he succeeds, it's as good, if not better, than anybody trying that kind of thing. So the answer is yes. When it works, I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from the publicity generated from his appearance in Hair, Meatloaf was invited to record with Motown. He linked up with another actor in the production, Sean Stoney Murphy, and they had an album called Stoney and Meatloaf. That was released in the summer of '71. It had one single was released in advance. What You See Is What You Get reached number 36 on the Soul chart, which is now retitled as Hot R&B Hip Hop. Later on, Motown replaced his and Stoney's vocals from one song that he liked, who was the leader of the people, with new vocals by one Edwin Starr. Or didn't Edwin Starr sing War? What is this good for?
Yeah. Wow. Look at this. I mean, look at who you're opening up for. Years, a decade before your breakout success. I mean, those artists you just mentioned are huge.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of reps, I'll say that, and I think that is important in any artistic endeavor, including sports. I mean, you got to get out there in front of people, and you got to perform. You got to improve on your craft. Groo, he went back and rejoined the cast of Hair, this time on Broadway, and he hired an agent. There he met his future collaborator, Jim Steinman. He sang a former Stoney and Meatloaf favorite of his, I'd Love to Be, parentheses, as heavy as Jesus, and subsequently got the part of Rabbit, a maniac that blows up his fellow soldiers in the production of Hair. Ron Silver and Fred Gwynn of Munsters fame also took part in the production. From there, he recorded a single, More Than You Deserve.
Singing and dancing?
Yeah, apparently so. Wow. Probably not well. He recorded a single, More Than You Deserve, with a cover of Presence of the Lord, a cover of the Blind Faith track, Presence of the Lord. I believe that was Clapton and Winwood.
Yes, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
The song More Than You Deserve, was that written? I think that was written by Jim Steinman.
Perhaps.
No,
this is why I said to you, I don't know.
But you said, there are gaps that I might be able to fill, and the only reason I say that is because More Than You Deserve appeared on a Meatloaf Jim Steinman album, not a Bat Out of Hell album, but it was an album called Dead Ringer, which I'm pretty sure Steinman wrote all the songs for. So it's interesting. What I did not know is that Meatloaf was singing Steinman songs on records before Bat Out of Hell, which you just told me. That's interesting to me.
The only thing I know is More Than Words by Extreme.
That was not written by that was written by Nuno and Gary.
Yes. Yeah. Well, moving on, he joins in late 1973. Meatloaf was cast in the original LA version of the Rocky Horror Show, playing the parts of Eddie and Dr. Everett Scott. The success of the musical led to the filming of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, in which Meatloaf played only Eddie, a decision that he said made the movie not as good as a musical, of course, because they cut him out of one part. And about this time, Groo, Meatloaf and Steinman started working on Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell is the debut studio album by Meatloaf, as well as his first official collaboration with composer Jim Steinman and producer Todd Rundgren. The album was released on October 21st, 1977 on Cleveland International Epic Records.
Wasn't that
its musical style is
Spinal Tap's label?
Perhaps. Its musical style is influenced by Steinman's appreciation of a few artists: Phil Spector, Bruce Springsteen, The Who, and of course we know, Groo, that Bat Out of Hell spawned two Meatloaf sequel albums, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back Into Hell, and Bat Out of Hell 3, The Monster Is Loose. But before we get to it, Groo, let's get a quick peek at longtime Meatloaf collaborator Jim Steinman. Jim Steinman was born November 1st, 1947. He is an American composer, lyricist, record producer, and playwright. He's worked as a musical arranger, pianist, and singer. Pianist. His work has included songs in the adult, contemporary, rock and roll, dance, pop, musical theater, and film score genres. He began his career in musical theater. He had, for theater, had done lyrics for plays such as Whistle Down the Wind and some other stuff I really don't care about. He has worked such albums as Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back Into Hell. He has produced albums for Bonnie Tyler. Let's go to some of his other stuff. He produced his most successful chart single was Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler. Air Supplies.
Making love. Out of nothing
at all. Making love.
It's a great song.
Meatloaf's.
You know what else he wrote that you probably don't even know? Remember Hulk Hogan's original theme? The one they used on the cartoon? The instrumental that they used on the cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling? That he came out to before Real American? Jim Steinman wrote that.
He also wrote... He
just connected Meatloaf to the WWF. That's pretty good.
What is this, the Kevin Bacon game? Yeah, Meatloaf could have been a character like in the 80s WWF. You know,
and don't
like
you remember Meatloaf was the drummer on the Land of a Thousand Dances video in the WWF?
I think I do remember that vaguely.
Yeah. So
yeah, we love that album.
We do.
We loved Grab Them Cakes and Pile Driver.
That's
those are our favorite songs.
That's a whole other podcast, the wrestling.
Yeah, some sexual connotation. He also sang, "Why won't Groo do anything for the show? Why won't Groo do anything for the show? He won't ride crap." He won't ride crap. I had a germ of a musical parody, but I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. He wrote Barry Manilow's Read 'em and Weep, Celine Dion's cover of It's All Coming Back to Me, which was originally released by Steinman's Project Pandora's Box, which was an all-girls group, and Boyzone's No Matter What, gay porn. Lots of adult contemporary fare here. Groo, it's going to be a quickie, but a quick look. Any thoughts off the top of your head about Jim Steinman?
Yeah,
a lot of adult contemporary stuff, though.
Yes, he's a brilliant songwriter. He's just not a great performer. He's a great piano player, but his voice just doesn't. But he's a great producer, which will come up later. And the reason I say that is because when we talk about Bat Out of Hell 3, he did not produce that one, and to me, that's what made the difference with that. But he's a great music guy, and a lot of the songs that you mentioned, specifically Read 'em and Weep, he wrote for Barry Manilow. That was also on a Meatloaf album, More Than You Deserve, as we spoke about. Meatloaf never covered Total Eclipse of the Heart, but he did cover It's All Coming Back to Me Now, which was a hit. So my thoughts on Jim Steinman, amazing behind-the-scenes guy. He turns crap into gold.
All right, Groo. Similarly, another huge name on the Bat Out of Hell series, so to speak, is producer Todd Rundgren. Todd Harry Rundgren, born June 22nd, 1948, is a American multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and record producer. He is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. As a solo artist, he was a member of the band Utopia. He's known for kind of being ahead of his time, sophisticated and often unorthodox music, lavish stage shows, and experimenting with technology, even back in the day with music. He also produced music videos, and again, as I said, promoted various computer technologies throughout the music in the late 90s. Todd Rundgren began his professional career in the mid-60s, forming the psychedelic band Nas. He later left on to become a solo artist. His best-known songs are Hello, It's Me. Hello, It's Me. And let's see here. And the 1983 single. That wasn't Lionel Richie. 1983. I don't want to work. I want to bang on the drum all day. That was Todd Rundgren.
Wow, I didn't know.
Which is featured in many sports arenas, commercials, and movie trailers.
Hell yeah.
He's considered a pioneer in the field of electronic music, progressive rock, whole bunch of stuff. His most notable production credits, Groo, include Badfingers, Straight Up, 1971, Grand Funk Railroads, We're an American Band, 1973, The New York Dolls album, 1973, and of course, Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, 1977. But quite possibly the most interesting thing I found out and most salacious story on Mr. Rundgren is his relationship with Liv Tyler, the daughter of Steven Tyler. That's Steven Tyler of Aerosmith fame, and I remember hearing this on the Howard Stern show. In 1972, Todd Rundgren began a relationship with model Bebe Buell. During a break in their relationship, Buell had a brief relationship with Steven Tyler, which resulted in an unplanned pregnancy. July 1st, 1977, Buell gave birth to Liv Tyler. Buell initially claimed that Todd Rundgren was the biological father and named the child Liv Rundgren. However, some time later, at the age of 8, Liv learned that her biological father was Steven Tyler. According to Liv Tyler, Todd basically decided that when she was born, she needed a father, so he signed her birth certificate. Everyone knew that there was a chance that it might not be his, but he paid to put her through private school, and she visits him several times a year. As of 2012, Tyler maintained a close relationship with Rundgren. I'm so grateful to him. I have so much love for him. You know, when he holds me, it feels like daddy, and he's very protective and strong. Groo, unlike Steven Tyler, we fathered no one, I think, and we have no bonds with any children. But a pretty wild story that Todd Rundgren took care of Liv Tyler as his own child, despite knowing it was Steven Tyler's. Pretty wild story.
Yeah, I mean, 5 minutes ago, I thought Rundgren was just a producer on Bat Out of Hell. I really didn't know a lot about him. That guy's rock royalty. To me, he sounds like sort of the David Foster of the 70s. Kind of like sort of had his hand in everything, was sort of progressive, ahead of his time in some ways, and just like a powerful force behind the scenes. That's what it sounds like to me, especially with Liv Tyler. Yeah.
Have you seen the David Foster documentary on Netflix?
No, I want to. I've skipped. I've seen it advertised, and it's something that's definitely on my queue. Did you?
I have not, but I definitely want to see it as well.
I definitely do.
All right, so listen, Groo, let's get to it. Bat Out of Hell was developed from a musical, Neverland, which was a futuristic rock version of Peter Pan, which Steinman wrote for a workshop in 1974. Meatloaf, they were touring with the National Lampoon Show, felt that 3 songs were exceptional, and Steinman began to develop them as part of a 7-song set, which they wanted to record as an album. Those 3 songs, Groo, were Bat Out of Hell, Heaven Can Wait, and The Formation of the Pack, which was later retitled All Revved Up with No Place to Go. Bat Out of Hell is often compared to the music of Bruce Springsteen. I don't get it. The album Born to Run, Steinman says that he finds that puzzling musically, although they share influences. Springsteen was more of an inspiration than an influence. Of course, we know that Max Weinberg and Roy Bittan from Springsteen's E Street Band played on the album, that only helped to reinforce that comparison and strengthen the album musically. So, I mean, I'll throw it to you. I know you're obviously we're both real big Bruce guys. Any thoughts on Weinberg and Bittan and Bat Out of Hell and any of the influences they had perhaps on that Meatloaf sound?
I think that there is lyrical connections, especially in the song Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell is kind of like a Jungle Land type song, where it, comes from, it starts here, then goes there, and it's talking about being young and on the streets and doing things in cars, girls and cars. Girls and cars are all over these lyrics. Musically, this is in a world by itself. So I don't see even though you have basically the rhythm section of the E Street Band in there, musically I don't see it, but lyrically I do. I pretty much know the lyrics to most of these songs, if not all. The exception here might be like you took the words right out of my mouth. That has more of like a Ronettes feel to it.
Yeah.
Sort of 60s-ish. But other than that, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, yeah, I can see that. For Crying Out Loud, definitely. But lyrically, that's where I see the connection. Other than that,
Really?
Yeah, I do. A little bit. Now that you mention it, I never really thought about that before, except with Bat Out of Hell, the song. I've always thought that. But I see it in other ones. Like Springsteen likes to paint portraits with his lyrics, and so does Jim Steinman. They have a very similar writing style, and that's where I see it.
Yeah, I agree about that point. I think musically, I don't.
I
Loaf
agree.
is a much more Broadway sort of flamboyance. I think he hits some of the same themes, but I don't know. Springsteen just has a much more grittier city feel to it. Those songs that tend to bring forth that narrative. Jungleland, I just think there's a grittiness there that's not comparative to Meatloaf.
Well, I'm not really comparing them. I'm just saying, like if there's anything similar or anything that Bat Out of Hell was inspired by, because that's obviously that's been said before. So I'm trying to look for things, and I see it a little bit, but like I said, they're both completely different works that stand on their own 1,000%. Of course, I'm speaking just like Springsteen's Born to Run, which came out I think 2 years before Bat Out of Hell.
During production for Bat Out of Hell, they linked up with Ellen Foley, who joined them for Paradise. Who was Ellen Foley? Not Mick Foley. Ellen Foley. Thank you, Groo. I was going to, set that up, and I can't crumble up my notes.
He just poured lighter fluid all over himself, like the guy in Airplane.
Well, I did go back and research this because I wanted to know who Ellen Foley is. Ellen Foley's claim to fame, of course, was her singing and duetting with one Mr. Loaf on the Meatloaf single "Paradise by the Dashboard Lights," and of course a run on the successful NBC television sitcom Night Court as the character Billy Young. Any thoughts on Night Court? Harry Anderson vehicle? I remember fondly that show. I enjoyed it. I watched it when it was on.
I'm a huge Night Court fan. Yeah.
Of course.
I am. I think like the middle seasons of that show, post Ellen Foley, are among some of the funniest seasons of TV out there. The Ellen Foley years, actually, the show was trying to sort of find its footing. And by the time she was gone, it had found it. I'm a huge fan of Night Court.
Well, stay tuned for our Night Court podcast, the Ellen Foley years, coming up in 2000. All right. Well, they had a lot of problems linking up with a music, with a record company, and CBS executive Clive Davis rejected the project. According to Meatloaf's autobiography, I found this interesting. Clive Davis commented that actors, quote, don't make records, and challenged Steinman's writing abilities and knowledge of rock music. Now, I'm not a huge Meatloaf guy, but I found this to be actually an interesting quote by Clive Davis, because this plays into one of my own personal biases, which is like, I'm so skeptical when I see an actor or, going into the musical world or maybe vice versa. And I don't know why, but am I right for that bias, or am I just jealous of a very talented person who might be very creative in a lot of different realms?
No, you're right for that bias, but when we talk about that, we're usually talking about people who have a filmography that goes way back and very deep, and all of a sudden now they want to try becoming a rock star, like a Russell Crowe or a Kevin Bacon, people like that who we know already very well. And then, we'd rather see them acting than singing. Meatloaf in 1977, while having a couple of acting credits, he wasn't known by anybody outside that circle. I mean, look, I was 2 years old, so I don't really know, but
right. But he had done Rocky Horror Picture Show? Is that correct?
Yeah, but that's Rocky Horror Picture Show. It doesn't even count as a movie. I mean, it's such a, it's not like he was going up for Hamlet next, No,
but it was a huge, it's a big cult following, right? I mean, maybe years later, but
yeah, but it wasn't at the time though. I think it was 1975, if I'm not mistaken. But again, you're right. when we see these.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm skeptical of a guy who's doing Broadway and all of a sudden he's fronting a rock and roll band. Even today, I'd be like, I'd be very skeptical of that, and I don't know why. My personal bias. Like,
I'd say it's
anytime I see these actors, there's one or two. They try to front the band. I'm like, I don't even give it a time of day, but maybe I should. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. But like I said, at that time, Meatloaf was not a star. Nobody really knew who he was. He wasn't the star of Rocky Horror. He had one scene. He wasn't the star of Hair. He wasn't. He was in these smaller parts, and so really nobody really knew who he was. So that. You don't have the stigma when you look at an album. You don't look at Bat Out of Hell and say, "Oh, that actor's trying to be a rock star." You wouldn't get that like if you were in Best Buy and saw, "Oh, here's the new Russell Crowe album." It's not the same thing. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Actually,
I just want to announce I am fronting the production of No Hair as Eddie, the psychotic. No, I don't know.
What about teachers who try to become rock stars? That can work.
Yeah, that I would allow. Just actors, no. They're too talented and too handsome. Yeah. All right, let's get to a group. Recording for Bat Out of Hell started in late 1975 at Bearville's studio in Woodstock, New York. As we said, Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg joined up with for Meatloaf for production. In addition, members of Todd Rundgren's group Utopia also played on the album. Edgar Winter played the saxophone on All Revved Up. Rundgren himself played some guitar, and they wanted to have the sort of that Phil Spector wall of sound. By the way, just wanted to ask you real quick: have you seen the Phil Spector movie with
yes, Al Pacino?
Al Pacino?
Yeah.
What'd you think? Yeah,
because it's not
over the top.
It's about it's about the case, not about his career. I'm more interested in his in his wall of sound type of career, and it didn't really cover much of that. So
okay, let's see here. All right. The iconic Phil Rizzuto baseball play-by-play call for Paradise by the Dashboard Light was recorded in 1976 at the Hit Factory in New York City by Rundgren, Meatloaf, and Steinman. As an Italian Catholic, Rizzuto publicly maintained that he was unaware that his contribution would be equated with sex in the finished song. However, Meatloaf asserts that Rizzuto claimed ignorance only to stifle criticism and was fully aware of the context of what he was recording. So, Groo, as I wrote, even back in the 70s, that politically correct thing was going on, too.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
Thank you. Really, way to paint a picture with your...
Yeah, well, I guess it's boring when we agree. But...
No, I just found it funny that, I guarantee Rizzuto, I know he's probably a straight, I've never met Phil Rizzuto, I've only listened to him. I guarantee he was probably a straight shooter, but I'm sure he had to know the subtext of this play-by-play and how
you don't go into a recording studio, cash a check without knowing how your famous voice is going to be used, in what context. So I definitely think Meatloaf is telling the truth there. No way, Rizzuto didn't know.
So look, I'm not going to get into it, but obviously Steinman had some different... A lot of these songs came from different plays and opuses that he wrote, Dream Engine, Neverland, and a sort of kind of evolved into the Bat Out of Hell, and of course there's even a Bat Out of Hell, the musical. But let's get to it. The opening track, Bat Out of Hell, is a result of Steinman's desire to write the most extreme crash song of all time. You took the words right out of my mouth, is musically inspired by the rock chords of The Who's Baba O'Reilly, with a Phil Spector-style melody on the top. The song 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad was written in direct response to actress Mimi Kennedy, who asked Jim Steinman if he could write a simple song similar to an Elvis Presley record. Todd Rundgren identifies that the song was influenced by the Eagles, who were very successful at the time. The producer also highlights the underlying humor in the lyrics, citing the line, There ain't no Coup de Ville hiding at the bottom of a Cracker Jack box. He said that you can only get away with this in a Meatloaf song. Shocking, scandalous. Let's see here. We already talked about Ellen Foley. Let's see. For Crying Out Loud was originally written by Steinman for the 1975 New York Shakespeare Festival, musical Kid Champion. And apparently there's a recording with an unknown artist in the New York Public Library archives. Jim Steinman considers the line, "And can't you see my faded Levi's bursting apart," as his most daring lyric on the entire album.
Wait a minute. Come on. It's a great song. Can't you see my faded Levi's bursting apart?
All right, the cover, Jim Steinman is credited with the album cover concept, which was illustrated by one Richard Corbin. The cover depicts a motorcycle ridden by a long-haired man bursting out of the ground in a graveyard. In the background, a large bat perches atop a mausoleum that towers above the rest of the tombstones. In 2001, Q magazine listed the cover as number 71 in its list of the 100 best record covers of all time. Any thoughts about that?
Yes, I would put it much higher on that list. I think these covers, all three of them, are brilliant. And like when you think of great covers, like it's like picture yourself walking through a record store, and I'll just tell you a brief story. When I was on our camp big trip in the H group,
of course.
Well, wait a minute. It's relevant. He
can't help himself.
It's relevant.
No, it's not.
Okay, my parents had written me a letter that said they just bought a CD player. So I'm literally in the store, Newbury Comics. Those of you who've been to Harvard Square in Boston know where that is, or know where that was. I don't know if it's still there. And I'm looking for a CD. I wanted to buy enough money for one CD, and I wanted to buy like my first CD ever. And I'm looking at the stuff, and I really wasn't a huge fan, like diehard fan of anything yet. So I'm just looking for something, and I come across Meatloaf, "Bat Out of Hell," and I'd never really heard it before. And I saw the cover, and I was interested in it, and I went up to the front, and I said, is there any way I could hear some of the stuff on this? And they played some of the stuff, and I was like, give it to me. But it was the cover that intrigued me. And when that's what covers are for. They're supposed to sell the album, and this one certainly did for me. And because of that cover, I will say that's why I'm, all these years later, I'm such a huge Meatloaf fan, and I've seen him in concert many times and bought every album. So the cover's the thing. And I think that cover is amazing. It should be higher on that list. I know, long answer to a short question.
That's your problem.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
name 5 covers that are better than that one. Dark Side of the Moon. Fine.
Well, what I would say is they don't make covers like that anymore because they don't make albums like that anymore.
That's
so
true.
The iconic rock album cover is probably dead. If anything, I would say hip hop has more daring covers. I'll
agree with that. Yeah.
Real quick, Steinman had wanted equal billing with Meatloaf on the album's title. He wanted it to be called Jim Steinman Presents or Jim and Meat, gay porn, or vice versa. For marketing reasons, the record company wished to make Meatloaf the recognizable name, which I think obviously is the right call. As a compromise, the words songs by Jim Steinman appear relatively prominently on the cover. Meatloaf believes that this first confrontation over the billing probably was the beginning of what he calls, quote-unquote, their ambivalent relationship, and which I was surprised. I was a little bit shocked by this. Again, as we've seen time and time again, Groo, in entertainment, money, ego makes its way into a successful entertainment relationship and begins to fray. Are you aware? Well, I mean, obviously there are hard feelings, but are you aware with the cover and the billing? Any thoughts on that?
I was aware. I wasn't aware about the cover issue. I was aware about the billing issue, and I remember, hearing in one of those VH1 Behind the Music things about Steinman's wanting to be prominently featured. and the record company saying this should be a one-man show. And then, I remember that.
Do you think that was the right move?
Yes, I think it was. I think it's a perfect move. Jim Steinman presents that's what you would see on a playbill, for a Broadway show. This is not that. This is rock and roll. So, but songs by Jim Steinman is actually perfect. And you don't agree with that?
Well, yeah, I do, but I have to agree with something Howard Stern once said on his show, which is, when you watch David Letterman, it doesn't say, this joke or this line was written by Tom Johnson. And I agree. While I feel these collaborators are very, very important, ultimately, I'm going to see Meatloaf, and I want to see Meatloaf perform and sing. So I think the record company made the right call by making Meatloaf the prominent figure on the album. And I agree. I'm glad that Steinman got it. I could care. I don't really have too many thoughts on it. I'm glad he got some side billing nonetheless, but it's a Meatloaf album.
Well, can you think of another
Yes, I can.
Like
do you see I don't know, I'm not aware of it, but do you see, it's not Elton John and Bertie Taupin present.
No, but there's a difference because Elton John does write the music. Lyrics are all, Taupin only writes the lyrics, and I thought of that, but then I remembered that.
Don't be too. All right, but don't.
It's different. It's different.
I'm not. I get it, but I think you're being it's a little bit. I'm not going to say minutia because I understand what you're saying.
Right, but
I understand writing the music
this project. But the Bad Outta Hell project was a Steinman project brought to Meatloaf. So I like the collaboration, and the knowledge of the collaboration. Like I remember, and I'll tell you this, when I first saw the album cover for Bad Outta Hell 3, the first thing I noticed was that Jim Steinman's name wasn't on that front. So I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be weaker.
Of course you did.
It's true.
Well, let me ask you a question. You don't... Okay, and again, this might be a very obtuse comparison, but I don't remember seeing at least the beginning of the opening of it. It doesn't say Norman Lear presents All in the Family. It's All in the Family, and then you see credits, at the end of the show or at the beginning. So,
right. I think this was an exception to the rule. I think it really worked with this one. Because it was different. Because Meatloaf was different. I think it was just different. That's all.
All right. Okay. I think you bring up some good points. Let's move on. The phrase "bad out of hell" can be traced back. I just wanted to touch upon this to the Greek playwright Aristophanes' 414 BC work titled "The Birds," in what is first to be the first reference ever to a bat coming out of hell. Steinman registered "Bat Out of Hell" as a trademark in 1995. And actually sought to prevent Meatloaf from using the title in future albums. Let's get to we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's get to the track listing, Groo. Track 1, "Bat Out of Hell." Track 2, "You Took the Words Right Out of My Mouth," parentheses, "Hot Summer Nights." Track 3, "Heaven Can Wait." Track 4, "All Revved Up with No Place to Go." Track 5, 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad, a Moody favorite. Track 6, "Paradise by the Dashboard Light," and track 7, "For Crying Out Loud." All right, Groo, let's get to it. How did Bad Out of Hell do commercially? Bad Out of Hell is one of the best-selling albums of all time, having sold over 43 million copies worldwide. It has been certified 14 times platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. As of June 2019, it has spent 522 weeks on the UK albums chart, the second longest chart run by a studio album. I'll probably say number 1 is probably "Dark Side of the Moon" by Pink Floyd. Do you agree?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bad Out of Hell songs have remained a classic rock staple. Rolling Stone ranks it at number 343 on its list of 500 greatest albums of all time.
Wow.
So before we get to the commercial, just wanted to get to that. I knew you might have a comment about that. 343 out of 500. Does that sound high to you? Does that sound about right?
Should it be not even close? It should be in the top 50 at least. I mean, this is an album. This is an album where I look at this album and I see this is kind of like Born to Run. There's no filler. This is Born to Run. I think had 8 songs on it, and all of them were grand slams. This one has 7, and each one is a jukebox hit, grand slam, home run, everything. You'd want to hear every single one of these songs in concert. Bat Out of Hell, Took the Words, Heaven Can Wait, All Revved Up, 2 Out of 3, For Crying Out Loud, Paradise by the Dashboard Light. For God's sake, who has an album like this? Nobody. And they're putting it like in the 300s. This is ridiculous.
Okay, well, I think you're getting on your Meatloaf soapbox a little bit. But
I'm just saying this album is perfect. And how many of those exist?
May I ask a question? A probing question?
Well, you asked one, I was answering it.
Okay, because you compared it to Born to Run.
Yeah.
So let's use that comparison.
Okay.
Do you think Bat Out of Hell had the the pop culture impact that Born to Run had?
That's a tough
question. Because all right, so let me give you my thoughts and respond to what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think that's a good. I don't disagree about filler. I think it's a great album, track by track. But I think Rolling Stone also looks at cultural impact. Did these songs, quote unquote, change the world? Maybe change policy, change social issues. I don't think that this album did that. I think it's a well received album, and there's no filler. But A Born to Run to me was a cultural touchstone, and I listen. All I could say is like Time Magazine had Springsteen on there, and he said, the new Bob Dylan. That's something real. It's got a lot of gravitas. That had a lot of perhaps. And I was young. I was a baby, but it had maybe perhaps some more social implication, or had a real impact on maybe pop culture. Off the top of my head, I don't see Bat Out of Hell like that comparison. I see it as a very good, well done classic rock album, but it's maybe not changing the world. I don't know.
Okay,
that's my thoughts.
And I think I agree with you. I think Born to Run definitely had a bigger cultural impact. But here's the thing about Bat Out of Hell. I feel, and you may disagree with this, but they created something here that I think they wanted to have that kind of cultural impact, but it ended up being that something only really Meatloaf does or can do. This is a very unique kind of rock, the rock opera kind of thing. Like many of these songs, not just on Bat Out of Hell 1, but all of them, were written for Broadway type things and then used as rock songs. So, and nobody else really does that. I mean, The Who kind of does it, but they never really deviate much from their guitar-driven rock. Any song on Tommy could fit on, any Who album, I think. But this created something that nobody else has ever really tried to do. So, culturally, maybe it didn't change anything much. That's because it was so out there that nobody tried to even emulate it.
So I have my finger up to say, and he doesn't even recognize. All right,
I saw it, but I had to finish the thought.
But when you talk about rock operas, for example, we know that Queen and in The Who. Wouldn't you say the big difference was those artists did pieces to reflect an operatic kind of thing, whereas maybe I'm wrong. Didn't Steinman, he created plays and then sort of evolved songs into Meatloaf. So there they have that very Broadway-ish flamboyance, kind of thing going on that I do believe is unique to Meatloaf. But I guess if there was a difference, I see Queen and The Who as real rock bands that wanted to make an operatic sort of thematic piece, whereas Jim Steinman had plays and decided to take this specific number and maybe let's rock it up a little bit.
It went in reverse. But yes, and you're absolutely right. And Queen did do that. They put on the We Will Rock You show on Broadway. I think it was on Broadway. I know it was in England.
Well, I don't want to break down.
No.
I'm just saying.
No, I understand. And obviously, The Who did Tommy and Quadrophenia. Bat Out of Hell, if you look at the first two albums, Bat Out of Hell 1 and 2, this could be the cast recording for a legitimate Broadway show. That's the way these songs are written. So, yes, he goes backwards. He goes from Broadway to rock and roll, when most people take what they've done rock-wise and turn it into Broadway-wise. So that seems to be what Steinman did here.
Well, Groo, let's get back to the commercial. We know that it was a well received. Commercially sold a lot of albums. It was not an immediate hit in the United States. As a matter of fact, my notes have he played shows in Canada and got more of a following in Canada before the U.S. Let's see here. 2005. Okay, let's give you a few more things. 2005, Bat Out of Hell was ranked number 301 in Rock Hard magazine's book of the 500 greatest rock and roll and metal albums of all time. Bat Out of Hell was also included in a book that we've referenced before, 1001 albums you must hear before you die. So reviews were initially mixed, Groo, but have since become more positive. At first, Rolling Stone called these songs swell, but entirely mannered and derivative, and noted that the arrangements aren't bad, although the musicianship and musicians were commended. The review ends with the assertion that the principals have some growing up to do. Modern reviews grew. The legacy reviews are more positive. All Music declares that this is grand, guignol pop, epic, gothic, operatic, and silly, and it's appealing because of this. They acknowledge that Steinman is a composer without peer, simply because nobody else wants to make mini epics like this. Rundgren's production is applauded, as is the wit in the music and the lyrics. It may elevate adolescent passion to operatic dimensions, and that's certainly silly, but it's hard not to marvel at the skill behind this grandly silly, irresistible album. So, Groo, so much to chew on Digest. And Digest, one thing for sure, this has become a classic rock staple. So, Groo, the floor is yours. Before we move on, final thoughts on the critical and commercial response to Meat Loaf's Bat Out of Hell.
Well, like most other things, it's not as appreciated when it first comes out, but it's much more appreciated later on. Conversely, there are a lot of things that are lauded when they come out and then hated later on. But I can't disagree with anything they said about the musicianship and all that stuff, except I would raise it. I would say it's not just good, it's perfect. There is literally, on this album, there is not one note or one word that I would change. This album is so perfect. I mean, if you look at a greatest hits album for Meat Loaf, I mean, he's got like 15 or 16 albums, okay? Many of which we haven't even heard of. But if you look at a greatest hits or best of, all 7 of these songs need to be on it, okay? You go to a Meat Loaf concert, you want to see all 7 of these songs played in that concert. All 7 of these songs would be on any jukebox in America. This album is an absolute grand fucking slam. And there's nothing negative about it. Literally nothing. So I don't think it, even though they give it a lot of credit, it does not get the credit it deserves comparatively. There are probably albums that are higher up on these lists that we can look at and find things to criticize. There's nothing to criticize here from my perspective. So that's why I think it doesn't get the respect it deserves. So, but I agree, I do agree, with the reviews, the later reviews, but...
Well, here's the thing I'll say about this.
Yeah.
Legacy reviews are usually a lot kinder than the reviews at the moment of a release of an album or a movie, because time seems to soften edges, and there's a begrudging respect to albums that have lasted 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, that's just no two ways about it.
And I think when an album like this comes out and they hear something the likes of which they've never heard before, they've never heard anything like this before. That's why they use the words kind of silly and all that stuff. Like, yeah, it's nuts. It's out of this world. It's wild. and perfectly so. But nothing like this had ever been released before. From the cover to the songs to the style to the songwriters on the to the songwriter on the thing, everything was so unique to this. And even now, when they get something new, it's like they're trying to reinvent the wheel or something. I don't know. I don't know what the attitude was like then, but it sounds that way from the initial reviews because it was weird and new. But like I said, they get kinder over time, but not kind enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you see this a little bit higher. I agree with you. 7 great tracks, but I kind of leave it there. I don't see it as quite the cultural and historical. I remember going to see Meatloaf with you, and we were like, we kind of goofing on, 17-minute mini operatic opuses and songs with parentheses in it. It is a great album. Do not get me wrong. Maybe to me it's the difference between you may hate this, but having a good meal at TGI Fridays or going to a fancy restaurant. To me, Bat Out of Hell it's a nice meal at TGI Fridays. I don't see it as the classic perhaps
I
you see it, but it's damn good. It's damn good.
This is a meal that I would remember forever.
All right,
but I'll say one more thing. The song.
Go.
The songs, I'll give you this. The songs don't translate very well to the live performance. I'll say that.
Okay.
Fair enough. And maybe that has something to do with, the cultural impact.
Well, I would say this real quick. I remember being a little bit skeptical when we went to see Meatloaf, but I remember enjoying the show. I don't know if
it's fun.
It's such a long time ago. I don't remember maybe loving it, maybe like a great Bruce or a Billy show, but I definitely had a good time seeing Meatloaf.
Oh yeah, we had a good time, but we were definitely his voice his voice has never been as good as it was for Bat Out of Hell, and it's declined through the years, which I'm sure we'll get to, but yeah, it's always fun, but it doesn't do justice to the quality of this record.
All right, let's move on. Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell. So I believe 4 albums later, and following the success of Meatloaf's touring in the 1980s, Mr. Loaf and Steinman began work during the Christmas of 1990 on the sequel to Bat Out of Hell. After 2 years, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell was finished. So, Groo, let's get back to hell and check out Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell. Before we get to it, Groo, were you excited when you heard the Loaf was coming out with another Hell album?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know until I saw it in the store. And I bought it right away. I was like, I had no idea. I didn't even know about the single, which had already been released, which was "I Do Anything for Love." I hadn't even seen that video, which was a great video. I remember I was at college for the 3 months I was in Binghamton, and I remember walking to this like Prime Cuts type record store. You remember Prime Cuts from Rockville City, right? And that had like imports and stuff, and they would sometimes get like really great Bruce like bootlegs back when that was a thing. And then I see a poster for Bat Out of Hell 2, Meatloaf. I'm like, what is this? When's this coming out? And the guy says, oh, we have it right here. And I didn't even have them play it. I bought it right away, and I brought it home. So excited, yes, for the 2 minutes before I actually had it in my hands, yeah.
Well, I remember seeing the video on MTV and being astonished that Meatloaf was on heavy rotation in MTV and being very pleasantly surprised. So I don't think it was a while ago. I don't remember having prior knowledge of a sequel, and I remember being pleasantly surprised to see him on heavy rotation on MTV. I will say that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Released in September of '93, 16 years after Meatloaf's first solo album, Bat Out of Hell. In the midst of the success of Bat Out of Hell, desperate for a follow-up, management and the record company put pressure on Steinman to stop touring in order to write a specific Bat follow-up, provisionally titled Renegade Angel, in a 1981 BBC Rock Hour special. Steinman recalls the writing process. And I quote, I'm going to speak in my pompous entertainer voice. I started writing what I felt was Bat Out of Hell Part 2, definitely like The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. That's how I saw it. I wanted to do a continuation. I wanted to do an album that went even further, that was more extreme if possible, which a lot of people felt wasn't possible. But I just wanted to see if I could make a record that was even more heroic, because that's what I thought of it. Bat Out of Hell to me was ultimately very heroic, though it was funny. I wanted to do one to me that would be even more heroic and more epic and a little more operatic and passionate.
I think that
Okay.
I think that on that front, he might have failed, because this is Bad Out of Hell 2 is definitely more of a rock and roll album, less of an operatic.
All right, well, listen to Steinman versus Meatloaf in the continuation of the Bat World. Steinman says, I didn't call it Bat Out of Hell 2 just to identify with the first record. It really does feel like an extension of that. It was a chance to go back to that world and explore it deeply. Conversely, Meatloaf, when asked about it, ever the artist did not see a lineal succession, remarking, we called it Bat Out of Hell 2 because it would help sell shitloads. So now I'll formally throw it to you. Interesting comments before Steinman and Loaf. You know, Steinman's this very artistic, he's looking at continuation and comparing it to Godfather. And Meatloaf was saying, yeah, we slapped the title on it because we knew it was going to sell. I'll throw the floor to you.
Well, I go with Meatloaf on this one because they did do a follow-up to Bat Out of Hell called Dead Ringer, which was in the same vein. Same types of songs, all written by Jim Steinman. I think Rundgren was producing on that one. I think Bitten was playing on it. Bitten also played on Bat Out of Hell 2. But it was called Dead Ringer, and it was unsuccessful because the songs were not as good, and Meatloaf's performance was not very good, which I think has been documented. So Meatloaf's definitely right, because they did their follow-up, and it wasn't successful. So I would think that they'd realize that their next follow-up or their next album, they should be like, all right, let's just throw the title on there. So I definitely probably think Meatloaf is more. Because you know what, Meatloaf is definitely more of the business guy, and Steinman is more of the artist. So and the business guy's got his finger in a lot of different things. So I would go with. I definitely think Meatloaf is on target with that one.
Finger and things.
Oh Jesus! Your obsession with. I have one too, but not on the air.
Oh well, what? This is what I don't like about you. Then you leave me off the air. You'll be like, yee! And then when on the air, and I crack a joke.
Yes, but I just admitted it, so I'm right there with you. So all bets are off at this point.
Mr. Politically Correct. All right.
Right.
Steinman recorded an album titled "Bad for Good" as a solo project. Let's see here. And then he also formed this female group. Okay, 4 songs from Bad for Good were included on Bad Out of Hell 2. He also
Can I try and guess what they are?
You could try. I don't know if I even have all 4 on my notes. So
okay, I think because I kind of wrote some down here. I think Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through because I think he had released that himself out of the frying pan and into the fire. I think he had released that. Lost Boys and Golden Girls, I think he had released that before. And Everything Louder Than Everything Else. I think those are the 4 from this album that he had released himself on his own album. I think they were all on Bad for Good.
Well, this Pandora's Box album, Original Sin, was a commercial flop, but he took 2 songs from that album and gave it to Meatloaf for Bat 2. By the time Meatloaf set to finally record Bat 2 in early 1990s, the musical industry's enthusiasm for the project had waned. According to the artist's then manager, Tommy Manzi, in an interview with Hit Quarters, said, The project was considered a joke as far as the industry was concerned, and Manzi's management company, Left Bank, were quote-unquote laughed at for attempting to revive the fortunes of a well-established act rather than focus on the next hit band. Interesting thoughts back then, Groo, as perhaps even back then, Bat Out of Hell deal or a sequel was considered somewhat passé.
I think so. Yeah, because remember that was 93 or 92. It came out in 93, but all the business stuff was probably going on in 92. There was the big grunge movement with like Nirvana,
Yes.
Pearl Jam. Hip hop was definitely on the rise. Different types of music were on the charts. And the classic, you're talking about someone who hadn't been heard from since 1978 on a global scale. He spent a lot of the 80s in Europe where he was very successful, but and touring. But in the States, like personally, when I saw Bat Out of Hell 2 in this record store, I was like, this is the first thing he's done since Bat Out of Hell 1. Because I wasn't it's true, because I wasn't a huge fan of Meatloaf himself. I was a fan of that album. So it was the album. It wasn't Meatloaf. It was the album that I was excited about. And then I realized he's got a whole plethora of other stuff that wasn't successful. So it was the musical landscape was definitely different. And this was like trying to go back into hell, as it were.
Are you a fan of Meatloaf the food?
I told you that. Your mom makes...
Okay.
See, we're going to fight because you think your mom makes the best meatloaf, and how can that be?
Love it.
And how can that be when my mom makes the best meatloaf?
I'm sure she makes a delicious meatloaf.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned some things about business and artists. So these guys apparently had a series of financial and legal disputes in the 80s. Finally, Steinman and Meatloaf meet at Meatloaf's house in Connecticut in Christmas of 1989, and they played Bat Out of Hell on the piano. Steinman said working together seemed like a cool thing to do. Steinman then gives Meatloaf half the songs for the Bat 2 album, but refused to give him any more songs until he changed managers. The singer was managed by Walter Winnick and George Gilbert, who Meatloaf credits as being honest guys, but under Steinman's influence thinks would be incapable of dealing with the record companies. So Steinman says, I'm not giving you any more songs until you change management. And so, based on Steinman's recommendation, Meatloaf fires his managers and hires Alan Kovac. So you mentioned about business and artists, and I wrote in my notes, nice little power move by Steinman.
Well, yeah, obviously Steinman had learned a lot from, what had happened before. And the ups and downs of it. When they were kids in 1977 when Bat Out of Hell came out. So obviously he had gone through his own crap with record companies in trying to release his own albums and failing. So obviously he had grown a little bit, and Meatloaf probably agreed to do it because he felt the need to team with Steinman again. To get his own career back on track, and this was really the truth is they needed each other. Like the short answer is they needed each other, so each of them seemed to be willing to meet in the middle and make it work.
So why not just give me the short answer?
Well, I didn't really know what the short answer was until I had the long answer.
Recording of the album Groo, Bat 2 lasted from 1991 to 93.
Wow. Recorded
in L.A. and, of course, at the famous Power Station in New York City, New York. Many of the performers from the original album returned for the sequel. Roy Bittan of E Street fame performed keyboard and piano on most tracks, with Todd Rundgren, Ellen Foley, Rory Dadd, and Kasim Sultan there from Utopia, Rundgren's band, returning to provide background vocals. Meatloaf and the musicians are credited as co-arrangers, and Bittan and longtime Steinman collaborator Stephen Rinkoff are credited as associate producers. I think he was in Bunk 7B at Camp Wayne, Stephen Rinkoff. According to Meatloaf, he and Steinman had...
Please come to the office, you have a package.
Yeah. Meatloaf and Steinman had only one big fight throughout the album's production, which occurred during the mixing of One of my more favorite track, Life is a Lemon. Production took a long time, mainly because of the length of the songs. Meatloaf says, look, Jim's songs may be miniature operas, but they're always too long for radio. Steinman fought over with Kovac over the edits of I Do Anything for Love, with the manager advising that radio stations were unlikely to play anything over 5 minutes long. I think there's some truth to that. So, Groo, in my notes, I ask you, what about it, Groo? We joke around about it, but Meatloaf and Steinman, Steinman has a penchant for a very long song, parentheses, in its titles. We've joked around it many a time. Does that help or hurt him in terms of radio airplay?
Well, it hurts him it doesn't hurt him with radio airplay because they still play them. They edit them. Okay? So it doesn't hurt him. It probably hurts him personally, creatively. And I agree with him because when I listen to the song I Do Anything for Love, which I think is one of the great rock songs ever written, honestly, I really do.
Stop it.
I don't care what you say. I think that song is one incredible opus of a song. I hate hearing the shortened versions. In concert, when they play Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, another song that I really like, they don't even perform the whole one. They cut out the whole second verse. I hate that. I hate when they edit these things. Yeah, I hate when but they do it on the radio too. So yes, they're long.
Well, Groo, that would be called a radio edit, and so they have radio edits or radio singles.
Yes, and radio and what Steinman, I guess what Steinman didn't seem to understand is that the radio is used to sell the album. So who cares, really, what the radio plays, okay, if they're going to play the shortened version of it, okay? If I hear, I remember when we used to listen to the radio, I'd hear a great song, and then I'd want to go buy the album. It happened with Van Halen in 1984, okay? So I don't care if it's a radio edit. It's like an infomercial to sell the song. So Steinman should have realized that and not been so upset about radio edits because people were still going to go out and buy the album and hear the whole thing, which they did because the album was a hit. And I see your finger, but 1 second. The I Do Anything for Love video was unedited. So that was a 12-minute video. And that was in heavy rotation on MTV. So he had to be happy about that.
I guarantee, though, after a while, MTV put out a clipped version.
I'm sure,
There's no way.
I'm sure.
I'm sure the premiere and maybe the first couple of weeks they did, but I'm telling you, MTV, I'm sure had a TV edit as well. Now, to your point about Steinman, I actually find it admirable that Steinman. I completely agree with everything you say. What I do think is I find it admirable that Steinman has some artistic integrity, so to speak, and that he wanted the full operatic long-form version. But I agree with you. Radio drives album sales, especially CD sales back in that day. Yeah. So I find it refreshing that he tried to fight it. I don't disagree with anything you say, but I mean, I could see where a guy like Steinman, I mean, these are his babies, and he wants to be presented the way he created it. But I agree with everything you said.
The comparison I make is when you make a movie, okay, and it's on TV for free, it's going to be edited, okay, for content, for time, all that stuff. When you pay to go see it in the movie theater, you get the whole deal. To me, that's the same. It's the same concept. But yes, I can see how a guy. Look, Jim Steinman is obviously very protective of his work. He's very. I happen to know he's a very emotional guy about his art. So he doesn't like seeing people mess with it, you know. And definitely radio edits mess with your art, you know. So I could see him not liking that. But from a business perspective, it's like Billy Joel's The Entertainer, the song. It's basically that's what it is. You know, that's the way it works. And with this, it worked. It worked well. The album was a hit, right?
Well, you pause, and I'm ready to move on, or ready to, and you go, well, a little bit. Well, yeah. Anyway, I agree with everything you said. One thing though, Steinman had procured a contract for Lorraine Crosby under the Meatloaf's recording label MCA. Anyway, Lorraine Crosby was famous for the God vocals on "I Do Anything for Love." They had apparently thought of Cher, Melissa Etheridge, and Bonnie Tyler for that vocal role. However, Lorraine Crosby had recorded her part as the God vocals, although she has publicly stated that she has not received any royalties from the song. I wrote very interesting tidbit. I don't know enough about contracts and stuff like that, but apparently the female singer who did the vocal for "I Do Anything for Love" says publicly, "I never received a royalty from that song." Maybe she should, maybe she shouldn't. I don't know.
Well, it's got to be in the contract, but royalties are usually for the writers. That's from what I understand about it. But I was confused why they didn't. You said they had Ellen Foley. Why they didn't use her for "I Do Anything for Love," but Bonnie Tyler would have worked.
Well, I cut it, but basically she was a club singer from Northeast England. She visited them during the recording, and I guess they said, let's put you on wax. So she did the guide vocals, and they decided she sang it twice, and she never thought anything more about it until 6 months later. They got a phone call saying, "We'd like to use you on the record." So I know all I have is Cher, Melissa Etheridge, and Bonnie Tyler were considered seriously for that vocal part.
Yeah, well, Cher had done a duet with him on Dead Ringer, and it was pretty good, but it was more. I don't think Cher would have worked on this one, but her vocal on Dead Ringer was pretty good. So
did she wear that see-through that see-through?
Yes, there is a video. There is a video. You could YouTube it. There is a video. She was hot in the video. Yeah.
Well, then let's wrap this up quickly because I want to get on YouTube quickly. All right. Let's see here. The album "Bad Attitude Hell, Back into Hell" opens with "I Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That," a marathon, as Groo mentioned, 12-minute opus, which was, of course, as Groo mentioned, edited for single release in most countries. The track begins with a guitar playing to a sound like a revving motorcycle, a reference to Todd Rundgren's contribution in the middle of "Bat Out of Hell." Each verse comprises two things that he would do for love, followed by one thing that he would not do for it. The song combines stadium rock, so to speak, and ballads for most of its 12 minutes. And, of course, the female part was sang by Lorraine Crosby, who was credited on the album as Mrs. Loud.
I remember that, yeah.
Rundgren notes that the themes of the songs were darker on Bat 2 than Bat 1. The second track, "Life is a Lemon and I Want My Money Back," demonstrates that pessimism. Several things in the song are identified as defective, including love, sex, God, childhood, and the future. That's right up my alley.
You can shove it up your ass! I love that.
Yeah, I like this song. All music labels it as a stomping rocker that wraps up serious feelings in a cryptically witty metaphor. Meatloaf calls it a funny song. The third track, "Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through," is a prayer to rock music, celebrating how it is always there to help you through troubled times. The album's sixth track, "Objects in the Rearview Mirror," may appear closer than they are, and probably my favorite track, I really, really love this song, is a three-part narrative that describes the seasons, summer, winter, and spring, that reflect the atmosphere of the events being described, drawing its inspiration from its singer's often tragic childhood. And I will just say on a personal note, I have run to this song, and it's almost brought me to tears. I love this song.
This song. When I heard this song, I was like, this is something very special. Great video, but the song itself is a very special song. It really.
I think being turning 50 soon, and it's just I love it. I get a very retrospective look at my life, and I enjoy that song quite a bit.
It touches all the bases: childhood, friendship, relationships with family, and girls. The three biggies, right?
Yeah. The track quotes lyrics from "Bad Out of Hell's Paradise by the Dashboard Lights." It was long ago and it was far away. Oh God, I know.
So very far.
As does the next track, Wasted Youth, a spoken word fantasy monologue that was taken from Steinman's Bad for Good album. According to Steinman, good girls go to heaven, parentheses, bad girls go everywhere, is a teenage prayer. Lost Boys and Golden Girls is Steinman's interpretation of the story Peter Pan, and then he talks about how much he liked Peter Pan. I don't know about that.
Well, the name of their first thing was Neverland, remember?
Well, I do have a Sandy Duncan fetish, so I will get to that. I will say, I
just got the Hogan family theme song in my head.
Well, I will say this. I had a family member who taught in New York City's public schools, and they used to give them vouchers for plays. So there was a time where my family went to a lot of New York plays, and we went to see Peter Pan, and I do remember Sandy Duncan on the wire shooting across, and that was like in the 70s or the early, and I was like wild.
Yeah, it was great.
Even for back in the day. Groo referenced the cover art. Let's reference the cover art for Bat Out of Hell 2. The cover art was illustrated by sci-fi fantasy artist Michael Whalen, again following the style of Richard Corbett's cover for Bat Out of Hell. It features a biker from the first cover flying on his motorcycle towards a giant bat perched on top of New York City's Chrysler Building, to which an angel is bound. Echoing the gravestones of the first cover, partially destroyed skyscrapers inhabit the lava landscape. Also, like the first album, it features songs by Jim Steinman credit, although smaller and located at the bottom of the cover. So I'll throw it to Groo. Any thoughts on the Steinman crediting and the cover art to Bat 2?
Cover art's great. I'm not quite sure why they made the choice to put the name on the bottom. Didn't make any difference to me. I don't know if that was a thing or whatever, but the cover art, like a sequel, looks enough like the original, but is different enough to set it apart, and it continues the idea of the narrative that they're going for. It's a great cover. It's got. I know the first one had kind of like an orangey tint to it. This one has more of a bluish thing, but it still works. It's the same idea. It's the whole, the horse / motorcycle kind of thing. It's same ideas and just same themes, and it's in that way it's comfort food.
Oh God, with the comfort food, you really hit that analogy all the time.
I never said that before.
Food. You've said it so many times. Listen to Bon Jovi. Every song's comfort food. It's good, but it's tasty, but not nutritious. The
cover's tasty, but not nutritious. I don't know, but
yeah.
But
real quick,
it's very welcoming. The cover. Let's put it that way.
All right. I know we went over some of the songs. Let me go over real quick the track listing. I Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. Life is a Lemon, and I Want My Money Back. Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through. It Just Won't Quit. Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire. Objects in the Rearview Mirror May Appear Closer Than They Are. Wasted Youth. Everything Louder Than Everything Else. Good Girls Go to Heaven. Bad Girls Go Everywhere. Ain't that the truth? Back Into Hell and Lost Boys and Golden Girls. 3 tracks from the album Groo were released as singles. I Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. That was a number 1 hit that reached number 1 in the charts in 28 countries. It spent 7 weeks atop the UK singles chart, making it the most successful single in the UK that year. Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through reached number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 11 on the UK singles chart. The third single from the album, Objects in the Rearview Mirror, May Appear Closer Than They Are, did less well when it was released in 1994, reaching only number 38 on the Billboard Hot 100 and charted at number 26 in the UK. Life is a Lemon peaked at number 17 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Track chart. Michael Bay directed 3 music videos from the album. I Do Anything for Love is based on Beauty and the Beast and the Phantom of the Opera. Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through features a runaway girl played by Angelina Jolie. Objects in the Rearview Mirror illustrates the song's narrative featuring Robert Patrick. The video contained flying aircraft imagery that he would use in Armageddon and Pearl Harbor. And I did write, and this is the one thing when I saw, it was somewhat weird yet very pleasing, as you mentioned, to see Meatloaf smack dab in the MTV era and getting his music videos played on heavy rotation at MTV, especially as you referenced in the era of grunge. So before we get to commercial reception, any thoughts on the singles and the music videos from Bat 2?
Yes, the singles are all home runs, and those 3 videos are all home runs. The album itself, I think, is a really, really good album. And I did this on purpose because the first Bat Out of Hell was 7 songs, so I took 7 songs from this album to make a perfect album. Because there is some filler on there. Wasted Youth is filler to me. Everything Louder Than Everything Else is filler to me. But if you take these 7 songs, I Do Anything for Love, Life is a Lemon, Objects in the Rearview Mirror, Rock and Roll Dreams, It Just Won't Quit, Out of the Frying Pan, and Lost Boys and Golden Girls, you have another perfect album. Not on the level of the first Bat Out of Hell, but it's an album full of winners. And the rest you can sort of, I don't want to say throw away, but they're not up to the standards of what they should be for Bat Out of Hell. But yeah, and I remember seeing him do on the Grammys. I remember seeing him do Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, and it was an incredible performance. Incredible. It's probably you could find it on YouTube. It was so good. So yeah, I agree with you. It was great to see him back in the relevant,
It's not only that, we're in the middle of grunge, and to see a classic rock artist who's almost Broadway-ish, very adult, listen, you can say what you want, very smack dab in that adult contemporary world. I remember, I was in college, and I was in, maybe, the TV hall, and I was like, whoa, I couldn't believe he's on MTV. And then, up next is a Nirvana or a Pearl Jam music video, and it was great to see. We know that classic rock was losing ground. It was great to see a guy that I consider a classic rock artist to get some heavy rotation on MTV.
Yeah, I think that probably had something to do with the fact that even though that grunge and all that stuff was on the rise and really big, people still knew the songs from Bat Out of Hell. They might not have known Meatloaf per se, but if you played any of those songs, they would know them. And I think that Bat Out of Hell 2 played on that sort of acknowledgement, which I think speaks to because the business loves a comeback story, and it was a huge comeback for Meatloaf, and I think that's a testament to Meatloaf knowing what to name the album. I think that had a lot to do with it.
All right, Groo, how was Back? I wrote Back Out of Hell. How was Bat Out of Hell 2 commercially received? Despite its huge commercial success, critical reception was mixed. Q Magazine proclaimed, truly, this is a genuine follow-up to the most over-the-top rock album of all time. Q referred to the excesses of the Steinman style, citing the length of the songs. Q says Objects running for 10 minutes and 12 seconds is, quote, not necessary, unlike the original where the epic loud songs were offset by the softness of stuff like 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad. Even the ballads are Roman orgies of sound and fury. However, overall, Q is positive, concluding that the sentiment ultimately Bat Out of Hell may not trash its predecessor, but it is a mad, crunching stadium rock album. It's probably the best thing of its kind you'll hear this year. Kerrang! Magazine suggests that it won't appeal to Nirvana or Metallica fans, but there's an older generation of rockers out there who will, quite properly, worship this album. They gave it a 4-star review, declaring it a work of genius, a really well-made rock classic, and arguably the last word in rock opera. Rolling Stone gave the album a mixed review. They called it harmless, low-octane operatic drivel with insufferably long Steinman compositions with equally long names. I gave a couple of more. The Fort Worth, Texas Star-Telegram referred to the length of the songs in which Steinman, quote, vomits up 75 minutes of endlessly repetitive choruses. The newspaper branded it, quote, the worst pop album of 1993. As we said before, Groo, the legacy reviews, the retrospective reviews have been much more appreciative. All music appreciates the bombast and the pseudo-operatic splendor of Jim Steinman's grandly cinematic songs. Responding to the concerns about the length and overstatement of the work, they reply, that's precisely the point of the album, and that's why it works so well. No other rock and roller beside Meatloaf could pull off the humor and the theatricality of Back into Hell and make it seem real. In that sense, it is a worthy successor to the original. So again, Groo, lots to, in terms of the food, Meatloaf, lots to chew on here. Was a sequel necessary? Did it deliver? We report, you decide. Groothius, the floor is yours. Bat Out of Hell 2.
Yes and yes. And, those last couple reviews really said it. That it's something that only really Meatloaf and Steinman can do. And, the negative reviews were saying basically they wanted it to be like current. And that's not what they were going for. They were going for retro. And they got it. With a little bit of more late 80s style bombast thrown in. But no, this is a great record.
So here's my question to you: Are there elements and themes? I mean, is it a seamless sequel, or did they slap Bat Out of Hell 2 on there, like Meatloaf said, for sales, or do you see some kind of linear progression from Bat 1 to Bat 2?
Only one. The songs themselves on this album do not have the narrative that Bat Out of Hell 1 has, so it's missing that. However, I do believe that the last, and I'm so sure that they did this on purpose. The last song on Bat Out of Hell 1 was For Crying Out Loud, and it seems to go right into I Would Do Anything for Love. If the first lyric, the last lyric of For Crying Out Loud is For Crying Out Loud, you know I love you. The first lyric of I Do Anything for Love is And I Would Do Anything for Love. Not I would do anything for love. It starts with and. And I really feel that that's like a really cool kind of bridge between the two. But that's where it ends. Because I think Bat Out of Hell 2 is so much different. And yes, what is missing is the relationship between the songs on this album. Bat Out of Hell 1 had that sort of linear thing that you were talking about. This one doesn't.
Yeah, well,
this one's a collection of great songs. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, when you think of sequels, like in the movie sense, you're revisiting characters as their lives or the storyline progress. It's almost like I guess if you wanted, like if Billy Joel did a sequel, The Scenes of an Italian Restaurant, what happened to Brenda and Eddie. So,
right.
So I was just you're more of a Meatloaf fan than me. I didn't know if there was some sort of real connection per se that makes it, or is it just perhaps cover art and the same kind of musical style?
It's what Meatloaf said, but that doesn't take away from the album's
No, I agree.
But the answer is in the fact that at least four of the songs that we talked about were Steinman compositions that he did before Bat Out of Hell. And that he tried to release on his own. So that in and of itself tells you that it's not really the kind of narrative, that sequel narrative that they were sort of pretending that it was supposed to be. At least Meatloaf tells the truth. Yeah, we just slapped the title on there to sell some records, and brilliant business move.
Well, Groo, let's move on. Some 2+ albums and a greatest hits package later. Just like Michael Myers, the bat will not die, as we now have Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell 3, The Monster is Loose, Groo, before we get to the particulars, when you hear Loaf is coming out with a third Bat album, are you excited, or now are you a bit nervous that he may be going to the well one too many times?
No, I was excited because he had done a few albums in between where he had not collaborated with Steinman. Maybe one or two songs each album, but he didn't really collaborate. He just was retreating them. So I was like, okay, they're coming back together. This is great. I'm excited. Then it was announced that Jim Steinman really had nothing to do with Bat Out of Hell 3. They were just using maybe 4 or 5 of his songs, but he had nothing to do with the production. And that's when I was like, all right, that's when I thought, all right, now they're just putting the name on it to sell more records than they did with the last couple albums.
Speaking of the name, Bat Out of Hell 3, The Monster Is Loose, is the 9th studio album by Meat Loaf, and it is the 3rd and final album in the Bat Out of Hell trilogy. Thank God. It was released October 20th, 2006, 29 years out of Bat Out of Hell, and 13 years out of Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell. It was, as Groo mentioned, produced by Desmond Child of Bon Jovi fame. It is the only Bat album, as far as my notes, it is the only Bat album not involving Jim Steinman at all in its production. The album Groo was subject to a legal dispute between Meat Loaf and Steinman, who had registered the phrase, as we mentioned earlier, Bat Out of Hell, as a trademark and attempted to prevent the album from using the phrase. In the end, 7 songs that Steinman wrote for various other projects were included. This followed up with a tour, the Seize the Night tour, which was a tour that concentrated upon songs from the 3 Bat albums. So, we ready to tackle this?
Sure.
Any thoughts on Steinman and, the Bat Out of Hell, Desmond Child, the whole legal wrangling with the Bat Out of Hell phrase?
Yeah, Steinman should have won that one. Steinman wrote it. Steinman came up with it, and they should. I guess they reached some kind of settlement, but I wish they didn't, because I wish they didn't call this album Bat Out of Hell 3, because to me, Bat Out of Hell is Meat Loaf and Jim Steinman, and the fact that he's not involved in the production is right there in the music. And even some of the songs are good, but this is, talk about like just throwing songs together. These songs have no relationship to anything that came before or anything on the album. They're just a bunch of songs, some of which are really good, some of which aren't. All right,
well then let's end the podcast. I mean,
why?
Right there. Good night, everybody.
Why?
Listen, I break it down slowly. We give background. We go track. Then I say, Groo,
okay,
let's get your thoughts. So now you just gave away the whole cat out of the bag.
No, I didn't. I didn't mention any songs. I just said,
look,
you asked me about Steinman, Desmond Child, and I'm saying that is why this album is what it is, and it's not what it's not, because of that exact thing.
I mean, people got to know there's going to be the law of diminishing returns. We've talked about it in movies. We've talked about it with music. I mean, they're going to the well. It just feels to me, and again, I don't have a lot of prior knowledge of Bat 3, but it just feels like a little bit of a cash grab.
It is.
It feels like going to. Okay, well, I'm saying for me, it feels like you go into the well one too many times.
Well,
and the one thing I've said to you, if I may add about Meat Loaf, if I may, and I think this is a negative, and I'm not sure why, but a lot of these songs you read about, Groo, and we talked about this briefly on the phone. It's from this opera, it's from this play, this artist covered it, and I'm going to take these 3 songs and pop it on this Meat Loaf album. It's almost like I hate to say it, like an incestuous quality to the, like I'm going to take these 3 songs that were on this guy's album and I wrote it and give it to Meat Loaf. It just feels like there's not a lot of creative spark. I know artists take old songs in the past. I know Van Halen's done, I get it. But it just seems like it's, again, like most things, starting to peter out.
Well, yes, absolutely. But Bat Out of Hell is such a I don't know. I don't even know what to call it, but you
It is iconic.
Yes,
it is iconic.
and you expect a certain level of quality, whether it's in the songwriting or it's in the musicianship or whatever. And if you're it's like doing, I don't know. It's hard to describe because this Bat Out of Hell is Meatloaf and Jim Steinman. So let me ask you a question. You said going to the well once too often. If this album was not titled Bat Out of Hell 3, would you still say the same thing? And if it was just called The Monsters Loose?
I mean, look, I listen. I listened to it a couple of times, and obviously, I don't know. It was on Apple Music. Now it's off apparently, but I would say it's nice to hear Meatloaf. I don't think I would touch it much after that, to be honest with you.
There are songs that to me are really good, and ironically, some of them are the ones that were not written by Steinman.
Okay, but here's my thing. You're sitting home. You go for a walk outside. You're hitting up Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell 3. I mean, I'm not. I'm going to work out. I'm listening to Jovi, Bruce, Bill. I mean, I'm not pulling up Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell 3. Now, with that being said, I enjoyed listening to the album, but it didn't have the same feel for me.
Yeah,
as the others.
Does not have the staying power of the other two at all. I would say there are two songs that.
All right, but we're going to break it down. We're going to get to it.
Okay.
Listen, to quote Meatloaf, for crying out loud, can we move on with this podcast? For crying out loud, I'm hungry. It's 841 Avenue. Okay.
Life is a lemon, and I want my money back.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the whole deal with Jim Steinman. 2001, they get together. Hair of the Dog tour. Meatloaf is working with Steinman and putting out a new album. However, in 2004, Steinman suffers some health setbacks. Meatloaf says, quote, lawyers worked for over a year putting together a contract for Steinman to do Bat Out of Hell 3. It was one of the best producers' contracts in the history of the record business. Ultimately, according to the singer, Meatloaf, Steinman was not well enough to work on such an intense project and made what he calls, quote, a selfish decision to go ahead without him. In promotional interviews, he said he did not want to wait.
Meatloaf called himself selfish? Okay.
Yes. He said he did not want to wait a year and a half to just find out that Steinman was still unfit. Describing himself as a really loyal person, Meatloaf said that the decision was to not use Steinman and that decision had taken a toll on him. So it has to be a tough decision either way. Do you wait or don't you? Time Groo waits for no one. We have seen this storyline play out so many times before with recording artists and bands. Someone is injured. Someone has a health issue. They don't want to wait. They want to tour. They want to get product out here. Groo, again, you've touched upon it already, but I'll go to you. Did Meatloaf make the right call here?
No. He made a very selfish call, and there's no reason in my mind why they couldn't just take the songs that they had. They don't have to title it Bat Out of Hell, okay? They could title it The Monster Is Loose and put out that album. They had put out other albums before, and they had put out other albums after. If you're going to do Bat Out of Hell, yes, you wait for Jim Steinman to be ready, because that's what made those Bat Out of Hell albums work. So the answer is yes, bad decision by Meatloaf.
So here's the rub. In 2006, David Sonnenberg, Steinman's manager, is quoted as saying, quote, Jim's health is and was excellent. There's no reason he should not participate in Bat 3. He has had some meaningful health problems about 4 years ago. He's been totally healthy the last couple of years. His health in no way should have impacted his involvement in the Bat Out of Hell project. Then, of course, there was a dispute over the trademark phrase Bat Out of Hell, which Steinman registered in 1995. Meatloaf sued Steinman and his manager in a complaint filed May 28, 2006 in federal district court in Los Angeles, California for $50 million. And to prevent further use of the Bat Out of Hell phrase by Steinman. Meatloaf has stated that he contributed lyrics to Bat Out of Hell. He has used the phrase extensively for tours, to which Steinman had never objected to until a recent falling out. Steinman and his representatives approached Meatloaf label, Universal and Virgin, asserting trademark ownership and threatened litigation to prevent the album's release. An agreement was reached, Groo, in the summer of 2006. According to Virgin, quote, the two came to an amicable agreement that ensured that Jim Steinman's music would be a continuing part of the Bat Out of Hell legacy. In promotional interviews, Meatloaf played down the dispute with Steinman, pointing out that it was over in 3 weeks, and this the lawsuit was purely done for the sake of business. Meatloaf said, quote, I consider him to be one of my best friends, but it's the real thing about managers. I think Steinman's manager is the devil, and Steinman feels the same way about my manager. So we had to communicate through managers, and he refused to sign some papers that would have allowed for the recording of Bat Out of Hell 3 without a hitch. So really, I didn't sue Jim Steinman. I sued his manager. Of course, Steinman was not involved in the recording or production of Bat Out of Hell 3, although the album does include Groo's 7 of his songs, 5 of which are covers of previously released songs. The other 2 were covers of Steinman demos intended for musical theater projects. All right, Groo, a lot to unpack here. Meatloaf trudges ahead without Steinman, sues him, but claims he's really suing his manager, yet keeps 7 Steinman songs on the album, 5 of which are covers. I mean, this all, to me, has the makings of trouble. Groo, thoughts on, anything you just heard between the musical partnership between Meatloaf and Jim Steinman that has produced remarkable results, but will not move ahead for Bat Out of Hell 3?
Yeah, I think I remember Meatloaf talking about this on the Howard Stern show.
Oh, did you?
He said exactly.
I'm sorry. I don't.
He said
Meatloaf has been on Howard.
Yeah, he said exactly what you just said. He said we're great friends. We communicate through email, but the business side of it, we always do it.
Don't you feel like that's a BS, like a BS backdoor? Like, I mean, here's the thing. For me to sit there and say, "Oh, I'm suing Jim, but I'm really suing his manager," don't you feel that that's?
But it's also something that we have no idea about, because look at people who have sued each other. I'm asking you your
feelings. I mean,
it might. It's probably a little bit of BS, but considering that they did get together again later and do a complete album together, I would also believe that even though they did sue each other, you can still remain amicable in that. So, but for this album, like I said before, they should have just got, if they wanted to go ahead, they should have just gone ahead and saved Bat Out of Hell 3 for later, which they could have done, but they decided not to do it. I guess business, money talks. But, it didn't have to happen this way, and I think the record suffers because of it. But, yes, I think Meatloaf might be embellishing a little bit. Yes.
Well, Meatloaf announces that Michael Beinhorn will be producing the record, but Desmond Child takes over the helm.
Is he in the bunk? Is he in 7B with Richard?
Yeah. You have a phone call. Meatloaf reports that Desmond Child would, quote, say things that made him think he was sitting next to Steinman. I find that to be a little bit of a vomitous quote, but that's just me.
That's weird.
It's like, which I would never do, like a podcast with someone else, and I go, "Oh, he reminds me of Groo." No, that's bull crap. It's either the original deal or it's something else. I
agree.
Desmond Child began recording sessions reportedly by playing Slipknot CDs in order to get the assembled musicians in the mood. They used musicians from Meatloaf's touring band, the Neverland Express, plus several guest players contributed to the album. I didn't want to just bring in, Meatloaf says, I didn't want to just bring rock players. I wanted to get extreme rock people. So, of course, as you mentioned earlier, that included Brian May, who played on Bad for Good. The album also featured guest performances by John 5, My connection is unstable. Hopefully you can hear me. Steve Vai
I can hear you.
and John Shanks of Bon Jovi fame. Todd Rundgren, who produced the first Bat album and arranged all of the vocals for Bat 2, arranged the background vocals for 3 tracks. In a promotional interview for the album, Rundgren has said, "Continuity is an important thing. However, in another interview, he said that his contribution was considerably less than on some earlier Meatloaf albums, calling his involvement peripheral. The album features 3 duets. Again, that doesn't seem like a good thing to me. Norwegian vocalist Marion Raven duets on It's All Coming Back to Me Now. What About Love features Patty Russo, who toured with Meatloaf for over 13 years. And finally, surprisingly enough, Jennifer Hudson performs on The Future Ain't What It Used to Be."
Right.
So, Groo, let's get to the track listing on Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell Part 3, The Monster Is Loose. Track 1, The Monster Is Loose. Track 2, Blind as a Bat. It's All Coming Back to Me Now. Bad for Good. Cry Over Me. In the Land of the Pig, The Butcher is King. Monstro. Alive. If God Could Talk. If It Ain't Broke, Break It. What About Love? Seize the Night. The Future Ain't What It Used to Be. And Cry to Heaven. Woo! The album opens up with the title track, The Monster Is Loose. The highly influenced by the gothic style of John 5 of David Lee Roth, Marilyn Manson, and Rob Zombie fame, who played the main guitar parts. The song is very heavy and continues Meatloaf's association with Major League Baseball, established with Phil Rizzuto's commentary on Paradise by the Dashboard Light. Blind as a Bat, written by Desmond Child, tells about how one is thankful for the love another has given him, even after he has done deeds to suggest that he does not deserve such love. According to Steinman, It's All Coming Back to Me Now was inspired by Wuthering Heights and was an attempt to write the most passionate romantic song he could ever create. In interviews, Meatloaf has said that in his mind, the song was always meant to be a duet. Henceforth, Norwegian artist Marion Raven, who had been working on her solo album with Desmond Child, was chosen because of the timbre in her voice. Starkly contrast that to Meatloaf. Bad for Good was written by Steinman under the inspiration for Peter Pan and Lost Boys Who Never Grow Up. Cry Over Me is, according to Meatloaf, a timeless song dealing with relationships of all kind. Monstro is a bombastic orchestral piece layered with chorals that lead to the piano introduction to Alive. Meatloaf decided to hire Desmond Child when he had revealed that he had written Alive especially for the album. The song refers to how the singer has overcome difficult periods in his life. What About Love is a piano-based duet with Patty Russo. It's a sexually charged song that echoes Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. Here the singers are singing about love throughout, not bitterness. Seize the Night has a strong orchestral foundation. Underneath their lead vocals and a choir, a duet with Jennifer Hudson, The Future Ain't What It Used to Be, is a pessimistic song based upon the myth that Pandora closed her jar before allowing hope to escape. Let's talk about the cover. The cover does indeed follow the style of the previous 2 Bat Out of Hell albums. Julia Bell designed the cover art and the artwork that appears alongside the lyrics in the booklet. She also supplied the art for It's All Coming Back to Me Now single. The cover features the biker from the first 2 covers about to slay the giant bat from the second cover, while the angel from the same cover takes cover behind a destroyed pillar. Like the first 2 Bat albums, Steinman's songwriting is credited on the cover, this time shared with Desmond Child. I'm going to tell you exactly what I wrote here. I'm going to tell you exactly what I wrote. No offense to Meatloaf, but there just seems to be this layer of pretension with these songs that is so overdone. I want to slam my laptop down during this research. Maybe I don't have that that creative gene. But well, let's get to it. Any thought about the cover art and anything with that 3?
Yeah, I mean the cover art's probably the best thing about the album. It's in keeping with the same thing. It's comforting. It's exactly what it's supposed to be, and that's about it. I mean, there's not much more to say.
Great. Let's get to it. How was Bad Out of Hell 3, Back into Hell, commercially and critically received? The album debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200. It sold over 81,000 copies in its opening week. His best work since Bad Out of Hell 2. However, it quickly slipped to number 60 after 3 weeks. The album peaked at number 3 in the UK chart, but quickly fell off. There were no charting singles from this album. Critically, Q gave the album a positive review, calling it the second best album to bear the Bat name, and saying that Child did an impressive recreation of the Steinman Andrew Lloyd Webber on steroids approach. While the album was overblown, frequently ridiculous, and largely devoid of irony, they were unimpressed with the title track, suggesting whoever decided it would be a good idea for Meatloaf to tackle new heavy metal should be tarred and feathered. Q did praise the operatic vocals and May's fabulously hysterical guitar on the track Bad for Good. Go ahead, sir.
So there are good songs here, but it's not a good album. It's definitely, whatever quote said that it's Meatloaf's best album since Bad Out of Hell 2 is wrong. There's at least one other one that I know I like better. It's called Welcome to the Neighborhood, which I like better than this. This one is, again, with this one, I took 7 songs that I felt would make this album work. And that is Monsters Loose, Bad for Good, Alive, What About Love, Future Ain't What It Used to Be, Seize the Night, and Blind as a Bat. Those are not only the best songs on the album, they're the only 7 good songs on the album. The rest of them were just not good. In the Land of the Pigs, The Butcher's King, If It Ain't Broke, Break It, I don't like those songs at all. These songs I like. Do I love any of them? I would say Blind as a Bat I love. Everything else I like. But this album, again, it's patchwork. That's why I'm disappointed. I was disappointed in it. It's all coming back to me now is the big single. What was it, 3 years earlier that it was a single with Celine Dion? I remember that video better than I remember the Meatloaf video for this song. I don't know, I don't know what they were thinking with that. So, yeah, all the things we've said about the production of this album is right there in how the album came out. I don't think it was commercially or critically successful, and it didn't really deserve to be. No,
it didn't. It didn't chart well in the U.S. and it had no charting singles. But let's get to it as we're running up on the clock. Real quick, 2007, the Seize the Night tour. Meatloaf attempts to sing the opening of Paradise by the Dashboard Lights, and Meatloaf suggests to the crowd that they should enjoy it, as it will be the last of his career. He attempts to sing the first line of the song, but instead says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I love you. Thank you for coming, but I can no longer continue." Removes his jacket and walks off the stage. And he says goodbye forever. Of course, his management makes a statement saying he'll be back. So was this it? Was this really it for Meat? Of course not. 2 albums later, the future is somewhat hazy for Meatloaf. 2013, Meatloaf said he would work with Jim Steinman again on an upcoming album called Brave and Crazy. The album was released in 2016 as Braver Than We Are. In January 2020, Groo, during an interview for The Mirror, Meatloaf announces, "I'm not old. I've got songs for another record, and I'm reading scripts." February 2020 Facebook post, Meatloaf announces his intention to record again, saying he has 4 or 5 new tracks, including Steinman's What Part of My Body Hurts the Most, a song long requested by fans, but was previously under contract restrictions, along with some of the 1975 demo recordings that were not included on the Bad Out of Hell album. So again, we've talked about digging up old songs, Steinman to rework it. So look, we're running up on the clock. Thoughts on the future of Meatloaf and that very generic rock and roll question: where does Meatloaf? You mentioned you think he belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Where does Meatloaf fit in the pantheon of the 70s through 90s classic rock artists?
He's definitely up there. He's definitely up there. As far as the future goes, I will always be interested in what Meatloaf does. Am I skeptical? Yes, only because his singing voice isn't even close to not only to where it used to be, but where a professional singer's voice should be. And that's not his fault. I mean, people age, but unless he's got the vocal cords better than they used to be, I don't see quality music coming from him anymore, and that's okay. He's probably like 72, 73, something like that. But I will always have interest in what Meatloaf does musically. Scripts I don't care about. I don't care about him as an actor.
Ironically enough, I heard Meatloaf, like Simon and Garfunkel, was joining up with David Lee Roth for the off-pitch. It was going to be called Loaf in the Roth.
Unlike the other two, Garfunkel could still sing, but like I said, and look, the album that he did with Steinman, Braver Than We Are, was not. It was definitely. I give it points for trying something completely new, but it's almost unlistenable. It's just so because his voice is shot and there's just so much weirdness on the album. I give him points for trying, but just didn't work. But then again, they've delivered before. You just never know. I'll always be interested in what Meatloaf has to put out there. He is one of my favorite. If I had to pick 10 favorite artists or bands, he'd be in the top 10, without a doubt.
Well, I would say for me, Meatloaf is in my top 10 favorite foods.
Me too.
No, I don't know top 10. I don't think for me, but I definitely have an appreciation for Meatloaf and have enjoyed his work.
And he's had quite a career. Nothing to be ashamed of at all.
Well, Groo, that's a wrap on Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell's. Speaking of Meatloaf, what a magnus opus this podcast has been.
Well, hey. It's perfect, right? It's supposed to be overblown, overstuffed, overlong.
Well, it was great to get back, the two of us, for our typical podcast. Let's talk about next week. It's going to be scandalous.
Yes.
We're going to be the Nothing Worthwhile Revelations podcast. We will be telling our deepest and darkest secrets, to a point, of course, but we will be revealing. We got some funny topics and perhaps stuff that Groo doesn't know about me, and perhaps stuff I don't know about Groo, so really that is it. Look for our Revelations podcast. Groo, you want to wrap us up and take us out?
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I will send you the topics.
Oh boy!
Via email. Check it out.
Oh boy! Yes, so next week we have our Revelations podcast. Thank you for joining us on Nothing Worthwhile, the Three Bats version of Meatloaf and Jim Steinman's long collaboration. Much like myself and my partner Evan Moody, we will be hitting you next week with our Revelations podcast. And until then, folks, 1, 2, 3. Rip 'em.
Rip 'em. Whack, whack. Comfort food.